What if human history did not begin where we were taught it began? What if entire civilizations rose, built impossible cities, mastered forgotten technologies, and disappeared thousands of years before the first official kingdoms entered our history books? Across deserts, jungles, mountains, and beneath the oceans, archaeologists have uncovered ruins that seem to belong to worlds far more advanced than their supposed age allows. Massive stones fitted with astonishing precision, underground cities large enough to shelter thousands, temples aligned with the heavens, and settlements built during periods when humans were believed to be simple hunters and gatherers. These discoveries do not prove that every ancient legend is true, but they raise a question that historians can no longer ignore: how much of the human story has been lost? Tonight we will journey into 7 ancient civilizations and mysterious sites that continue to challenge accepted history. Stay until the final chapter, because the last discovery may suggest that the greatest civilization ever lost is not buried beneath the earth, but beneath the sea. Göbekli Tepe, the civilization that should never have existed. Imagine standing on a lonely hill nearly 12,000 years ago, at a time when history says there were no kingdoms, no cities, no written language, no metal tools, and no organized civilizations. According to everything once taught in archaeology classrooms, the people living during this age were supposed to be small bands of hunter-gatherers wandering across the landscape in search of food, carrying only simple stone tools and struggling to survive another season. Now imagine those same people quarrying limestone blocks weighing more than 15 tons, transporting them across uneven ground, carving them into towering pillars taller than a modern house, decorating them with breathtaking reliefs of lions, snakes, vultures, foxes, wild boars, spiders, and mysterious human-like figures, then arranging them into enormous circular temples with astonishing precision. For decades, historians would have called such an idea impossible, yet that impossible place exists. Its name is Göbekli Tepe. Hidden beneath a quiet hill in southeastern Turkey, this extraordinary archaeological site remained buried for thousands of years, preserving one of humanity's greatest mysteries. When archaeologists began excavating the hill in the 1990s, they expected to uncover the remains of a small medieval cemetery. Instead, every layer of soil they removed revealed something that challenged nearly everything we thought we knew about the beginning of civilization. Massive stone pillars emerged from the earth like silent guardians from another age. Each pillar had been carefully shaped into the form of a giant letter T, many standing over 5 meters high. Their surfaces were not rough or unfinished. They were covered with incredibly detailed carvings that demonstrated artistic skill, planning, and symbolic thinking far beyond what experts believed possible for that period. Some pillars display fierce predators frozen in motion. Others show graceful birds stretching their wings toward the heavens. Serpents wind across the stone as though they are still alive, while mysterious symbols appear in places where no one can yet explain their true meaning. 2 enormous central pillars dominate each enclosure, facing one another as if participating in a silent conversation that has continued for nearly 12,000 years. Even today, archaeologists debate what these figures truly represent. Were they gods, ancestors, guardians, constellations in the night sky, sacred animals connected to forgotten rituals? Or were they part of a symbolic language whose meaning disappeared long before the first written alphabet was ever invented? The deeper researchers looked, the stranger the mystery became. Radiocarbon dating placed Göbekli Tepe around 9600 BCE, making it thousands of years older than Stonehenge, thousands of years older than the pyramids of Egypt, and older than nearly every monumental structure known anywhere on Earth. This discovery shattered one of archaeology's oldest assumptions. For generations, scholars believed that agriculture came first. People settled into villages, surplus food allowed populations to grow, governments emerged, and only then could societies build great temples and monuments. Göbekli Tepe appears to tell the opposite story. There is little evidence that its earliest builders were fully established farming communities. Instead, many researchers now believe these people gathered seasonally from different regions, working together to construct an enormous ceremonial complex long before large-scale agriculture became common. If this interpretation is correct, then religion may not have been the product of civilization. It may have been the force that created civilization. Imagine hundreds, perhaps thousands of people traveling across vast landscapes to meet at this sacred hill. They would have shared food, exchanged knowledge, formed alliances, performed ceremonies, and worked together to raise monuments that none of them could have completed alone. Such gatherings may have inspired permanent cooperation, encouraging communities to cultivate crops, domesticate animals, and settle nearby simply to support these enormous construction projects. In other words, the temple may have created the city, not the other way around. But the greatest mystery was still waiting beneath the soil. After generations of construction and expansion, the builders did something that still leaves archaeologists searching for answers. Instead of abandoning Göbekli Tepe to decay naturally, they deliberately buried it. Thousands upon thousands of tons of stone, soil, broken tools, animal bones and other materials were carefully placed around the great pillars until the magnificent enclosures disappeared beneath an artificial hill. It was not an accident caused by erosion. It was an intentional act carried out with remarkable effort. Why would anyone spend centuries creating one of the greatest sacred sites of the ancient world only to hide it forever? Did they believe their mission had been completed? Were they protecting the temple from invading enemies? Had their beliefs changed? Were they fleeing an environmental catastrophe? Or were they preserving something they hoped future generations would one day rediscover? No written record survives to answer these questions. No king signed his name. No priest left behind a sacred text. No inscription explains the purpose of the carvings or the identity of the people who built them. Only silent stone remains. Even more astonishing is the fact that only a small portion of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. Ground-penetrating surveys suggest that many more structures still lie hidden beneath the earth, waiting for future archaeologists to uncover them. Every new excavation has the potential to reveal another piece of a puzzle that has remained buried since the dawn of human civilization. Today, Göbekli Tepe stands as one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever made because it forces us to ask a profoundly uncomfortable question. If human beings were capable of creating something this extraordinary nearly 12,000 years ago, then how many other civilizations have been erased by time? How many temples now sleep beneath forests, deserts, mountains, and oceans? How many chapters of our earliest history vanished before anyone invented writing? Göbekli Tepe is far more than an ancient ruin. It is a doorway into a forgotten world, a world that reminds us history is not a complete story, but a scattered collection of surviving fragments. Somewhere between those missing fragments may lie the greatest secrets our ancestors ever left behind. The underground cities of Cappadocia, the civilization that chose to disappear beneath the earth. If Göbekli Tepe forces us to question when civilization truly began, then the underground cities of Cappadocia force us to ask another unsettling question. How far would an ancient civilization go to survive? Most great civilizations built upward. They raised pyramids that reached toward the heavens, temples that dominated the skyline, towering walls that announced their power to every traveler who approached. Throughout history, rulers wanted their cities to be seen. Their monuments were symbols of strength, wealth, and permanence. But somewhere in the heart of central Turkey, an ancient people made the opposite decision. Instead of reaching for the sky, they disappeared into the earth. Beneath the breathtaking valleys, fairy chimneys, and volcanic cliffs of Cappadocia lies an astonishing hidden world that remained unknown for centuries. From the surface, the landscape appears peaceful, shaped by millions of years of volcanic activity into soft stone formations unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Tourists admire the caves carved into the cliffs, the ancient churches painted with faded frescoes, and the dramatic sunrise skies filled with colorful hot air balloons. Yet beneath every beautiful view lies a far older secret. Hundreds of underground settlements have been discovered across the region, and archaeologists believe many more remain hidden. Some are relatively small, containing only a few chambers, while others descend deep beneath the surface through twisting tunnels that stretch farther than anyone expected. Together they form one of the greatest underground engineering achievements in human history. The most extraordinary of them all is Derinkuyu. Its discovery happened almost by accident. In the 1960s, a homeowner renovating his house knocked down a wall in his basement. Behind it was not solid rock, but a narrow passage leading into darkness. Curious explorers followed the tunnel and found themselves entering room after room, staircase after staircase, each leading deeper underground. What began as a simple home renovation revealed an entire underground city that had been hidden beneath the feet of ordinary people. As archaeologists continued their investigations, they realized they were standing inside a city unlike anything ever found before. Derinkuyu extends through multiple underground levels, reaching approximately 85 meters below the surface. More than 18 floors have been identified. Although not all are open to visitors today, the deeper researchers explored, the more astonishing the city became. There were family living quarters where entire households could survive together for months. There were communal kitchens blackened by ancient smoke, evidence of countless meals prepared beneath the earth. There were bakeries, wine presses, storage rooms filled with grain, olive oil, and dried food supplies. Animal stables occupied separate sections, allowing livestock to remain protected alongside their owners. Schools and meeting halls suggest that education and administration continued even while the city remained hidden. Small chapels carved directly into the rock reveal that spiritual life was considered just as important as physical survival. There were workshops where craftsmen could continue repairing tools. There were burial areas, indicating that even death became part of life beneath the earth. Every chamber reveals careful planning. Every tunnel reflects intelligent design. Every stone whispers that this was never meant to be a temporary shelter. It was a complete underground civilization. Perhaps the greatest engineering achievement was something invisible: air. Without fresh air, thousands of people living underground would quickly perish. Yet Derinkuyu contains an extraordinary system of vertical ventilation shafts extending from the deepest levels to the surface. These shafts continuously circulated fresh air throughout the city while also serving as communication channels and emergency escape routes. Some of the shafts descended more than 50 meters, supplying oxygen to every occupied chamber. Even today, engineers admire the effectiveness of the ventilation system. Water presented another challenge. Several wells reached underground water sources, allowing residents to survive without exposing themselves on the surface. Remarkably, some wells were designed so that only the deepest levels could access them, preventing enemies above from poisoning the city's water supply. Nothing appears accidental. Everything suggests long-term planning. Then there were the doors. Instead of ordinary wooden gates, the entrances were protected by enormous circular stone discs, each weighing hundreds of kilograms. These perfectly carved stone wheels could be rolled into place from the inside, completely sealing narrow passageways. Small openings allowed defenders to observe attackers or use weapons while remaining protected. Invading armies might discover an entrance. They might force their way inside. But once confronted by these gigantic stone barriers and the maze-like network beyond them, advancing farther became almost impossible. The city itself became a fortress. As researchers mapped Derinkuyu, they realized it was not isolated. Long tunnels appear to connect it with nearby underground settlements, including the vast city of Kaymakla several kilometers away. Although many connecting passages remain collapsed or unexplored, the possibility that multiple underground cities formed an interconnected defensive network has fascinated archaeologists for decades. Imagine an entire hidden civilization stretching beneath the landscape, villages above, cities below, people disappearing beneath the earth whenever danger approached, then emerging again once peace returned. It almost sounds like mythology, yet it is real. The origins of these underground cities remain one of archaeology's greatest debates. Most historians agree that later civilizations, including the Byzantines and early Christians, expanded and used many of these underground complexes while seeking protection during periods of invasion and religious persecution. But the oldest sections appear to predate many of those occupations. Who first imagined carving entire cities beneath the ground? Was it one civilization, several civilizations working across centuries, or did each generation inherit the hidden world from those who came before, expanding it little by little, until it became the immense labyrinth discovered today? No one knows with certainty. The volcanic tuff beneath Cappadocia is relatively soft when freshly exposed, making excavation possible with ancient tools before gradually hardening upon contact with air. Nature provided ideal conditions for underground construction, yet soft stone alone cannot explain what happened here. Removing millions of kilograms of rock required unimaginable labor. Designing ventilation that reached every chamber required remarkable understanding. Planning food storage, sanitation, water supply, livestock management, defense systems, and daily life for thousands of people demanded extraordinary organizational skill. This was engineering. This was architecture. This was urban planning beneath the surface of the earth. Some researchers believe the underground cities evolved gradually over hundreds or even thousands of years, with each generation carving new chambers as new needs emerged. Others suggest periods of regional conflict accelerated their expansion, transforming simple storage caves into immense underground fortresses capable of protecting entire populations. Ancient legends add another layer of mystery. Stories passed down through local traditions speak of people who vanished beneath the earth during times of great destruction. Some legends describe invaders arriving to find villages completely abandoned without understanding where the inhabitants had gone. Others tell of hidden kingdoms existing below the surface, accessible only to those who knew the secret entrances. Legends cannot replace archaeological evidence, but they often preserve distant memories of real places. Perhaps these stories survived because generations of local people knew that another world truly existed beneath their feet. Even today, discoveries continue. Construction workers occasionally uncover forgotten tunnels beneath modern buildings. Farmers sometimes find sealed chambers hidden beneath their fields. New mapping technologies reveal unexplored voids still waiting to be investigated. Archaeologists believe that only a fraction of Cappadocia's underground network has been fully documented. Every new tunnel raises fresh questions. Every hidden chamber suggests there may be countless more. The underground cities remind us that history is not only buried beneath layers of soil, sometimes it is buried beneath our homes. Sometimes entire civilizations survive not because they stood proudly against the sky, but because they chose to vanish beneath the earth, leaving almost no trace of the people who once filled their silent halls with voices, prayers, laughter, fear, and hope. Derinkuyu is more than an underground city. It is proof that humanity has always possessed an extraordinary ability to adapt when faced with impossible circumstances. It is also a warning that some of history's greatest achievements may remain invisible until one unexpected discovery opens a doorway into the forgotten world below. The Indus Valley Civilization, the advanced empire that lost its own voice. Imagine walking through the streets of a city that was built more than 4,000 years ago. The roads are straight and remarkably wide. Every neighborhood appears carefully planned rather than randomly expanded over time. Houses stand side by side, constructed from standardized baked bricks so uniform that many of them could almost fit into a modern blueprint. Nearly every home has access to fresh water. Wastewater flows through covered drains running beneath the streets. Public wells are scattered throughout the city, allowing thousands of people to collect clean water within walking distance of their homes. There are workshops where craftsmen shape beads from precious stones with astonishing precision. Merchants prepare goods for trade with distant lands. Farmers arrive carrying grain harvested from fertile river plains. Children run through organized neighborhoods while smoke rises gently from family kitchens. Nothing about this city feels primitive. Nothing resembles the image many people imagine when they think of the ancient world. Yet there is one strange silence. No one can tell you what this civilization called itself. No one knows the names of its kings. No one knows the language its people spoke with certainty. No one knows the stories they told their children, the prayers they whispered before sleep, the laws they obeyed, or the songs that echoed through their streets. It is as though an entire civilization lived, prospered, and vanished, while taking its own voice with it. This is the mystery of the Indus Valley civilization. Stretching across what is now Pakistan and northwestern India, the Indus civilization flourished between approximately 3,300 and 1300 BCE, reaching its height around 2600 BCE. At its greatest extent, it covered more than 1 million square kilometers, making it one of the largest civilizations of the ancient world, larger than contemporary Egypt and Mesopotamia in geographical reach. For centuries, nobody knew it had even existed. Then, during the 19th century, railway workers unknowingly began using ancient baked bricks from mysterious ruins as construction material for railroad tracks. Those bricks had survived for nearly 4,000 years, stronger than many modern bricks produced today. Only later did archaeologists realize they had stumbled upon the remains of one of humanity's greatest forgotten civilizations. The discoveries continued. First came Harappa, then Mohenjo-daro. Soon dozens became hundreds. Eventually, archaeologists identified more than 1,000 settlements spread across rivers, plains, deserts, and coastal regions. Every new excavation expanded the map of a civilization that history had almost completely forgotten. Among all these cities, Mohenjo-daro remains perhaps the most extraordinary. Its name, meaning Mound of the Dead, was given long after the civilization disappeared, but beneath that mound lies one of the best-planned ancient cities ever discovered. Its streets intersect at near-perfect right angles. Residential districts were carefully organized. Sophisticated drainage systems carried wastewater away from homes through covered brick channels that could be opened for cleaning. Some houses contained private bathrooms connected directly to the drainage network. Public wells provided reliable access to water. Many homes had multiple stories. The city even contained large public structures, including the famous Great Bath, a carefully waterproof pool surrounded by rooms that many scholars believe held ceremonial or religious significance. Think about what this reveals. Thousands of years before modern plumbing, before Rome became famous for its aqueducts, before much of the ancient world developed organized sanitation systems, the people of the Indus Valley had already recognized something incredibly important. A healthy city depends upon clean water. That understanding alone speaks volumes about their intelligence. Standardization appears everywhere. Bricks followed nearly identical proportions across cities hundreds of kilometers apart. Weights used by merchants were carefully calibrated according to consistent measurement systems. Even street layouts reflected organized planning rather than chaotic growth. Such remarkable consistency suggests communication across vast distances and perhaps some form of shared administrative system. Yet where are the palaces? Where are the colossal statues of mighty kings? Where are the extravagant royal tombs overflowing with treasures? In Egypt, pharaohs filled the landscape with monuments proclaiming their greatness. In Mesopotamia, rulers carved their victories into stone for future generations. In many ancient civilizations, political power was displayed loudly and proudly. The Indus civilization is strangely different. Archaeologists have found no unmistakable royal palace, no obvious throne room, no giant sculptures celebrating powerful rulers, no lavish royal burial comparable to those found in Egypt. This absence has fascinated historians for generations. Did the civilization have kings whose residences simply have not survived? Was authority shared among councils of merchants, priests, or regional governors? Did leadership operate in ways completely different from neighboring civilizations? Or did the people deliberately choose not to glorify individual rulers? Without written records, certainty remains impossible. And that brings us to the civilization's greatest mystery, its script. Across the Indus world, archaeologists have uncovered thousands of seals carved from stone. Most are small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. They display beautifully carved animals, powerful bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, tigers, buffalo, and one particularly mysterious creature often called the unicorn, because of its single horn. Above these images appear rows of strange symbols. Some resemble fish, others resemble jars, branches, arrows, ladders, circles, or geometric patterns. There are roughly 400 distinct signs. Together they form one of the world's greatest undeciphered writing systems. For more than a century, linguists, historians, mathematicians, computer scientists, and archaeologists have tried to unlock its meaning. Some believe it represents a true written language. Others argue it may have functioned as symbolic identification or administrative marking. Powerful computer algorithms have analyzed the symbol patterns. Artificial intelligence has searched for hidden structures. Experts have compared the script with Sumerian, Egyptian, Dravidian languages, Indo-European languages, and many others. Still, no one has successfully read a single sentence with universal scholarly agreement. Imagine discovering an entire library but being unable to recognize even the alphabet. Every seal becomes a message frozen forever beyond our understanding. Every inscription may contain names, prayers, laws, trade records, or stories, but until the script is deciphered, the civilization remains silent. The mystery grows even deeper when we examine its international connections. Archaeological discoveries reveal that Indus merchants traded with Mesopotamia, Persia, Oman, and regions surrounding the Arabian Gulf. Indus seals have been discovered in ancient Mesopotamian cities. Mesopotamian texts describe trade with a distant land known as Meluha, which many scholars believe refers to the Indus civilization. Ships crossed the Arabian Sea carrying timber, precious stones, metals, cotton, textiles, beads, pottery, and other valuable goods. This was not an isolated civilization hidden from the world. It was part of an international economic network stretching thousands of kilometers. Its merchants communicated with foreign cultures. Its products traveled across oceans. Its influence reached civilizations whose written records still survive. Yet, ironically, those neighboring civilizations left behind more readable evidence about the Indus people than the Indus people left about themselves. Then, around 1900 BCE, something changed. The magnificent cities gradually declined. Neighborhoods became less organized. Long-distance trade weakened. Construction slowed. Many settlements were abandoned. For decades, historians believed violent invaders destroyed the civilization. That theory captured imaginations because it offered a simple explanation. Modern archaeology paints a far more complex picture. Evidence suggests no single catastrophic event ended the civilization. Instead, multiple pressures slowly transformed the region. River systems shifted course. The mighty Saraswati-Gugga-Hokra river network may have weakened or disappeared in certain areas. Monsoon patterns changed. Long periods of drought affected agriculture. Trade routes evolved. Economic systems weakened. Communities gradually migrated toward regions with more reliable water supplies. Rather than disappearing overnight, the civilization may have slowly dissolved into countless smaller communities whose descendants continued living across South Asia. The people survived. Their cities did not. Nature reclaimed the streets. Dust buried the walls. Rivers changed direction. Time erased almost every visible trace. For nearly 4,000 years, one of Earth's greatest civilizations slept beneath the soil. Even today, archaeologists continue making remarkable discoveries. Entire settlements remain unexcavated. Ground-penetrating radar identifies structures still hidden beneath fields and villages. Modern technology continues revealing neighborhoods that have not seen sunlight since the Bronze Age. Every excavation uncovers new questions. Who governed these cities? What language echoed through their markets? What stories did parents tell their children? What beliefs united millions of people across such an enormous territory? And perhaps the greatest question of all, what secrets remain locked inside those tiny stone seals waiting for the the day someone finally learns how to hear the voice of a civilization that has been silent for 4,000 years. The Indus Valley civilization reminds us that history does not always disappear because buildings collapse. Sometimes history disappears because language is lost. The walls may still stand. The streets may still exist. The houses may still contain the fingerprints of the people who built them. But until their words can be read again, one of humanity's greatest civilizations remains a magnificent mystery, an advanced empire that left behind cities powerful enough to inspire modern engineers, yet took the sound of its own voice into eternity. Nan Madol, the stone city that rose from the ocean and defied everything historians expected. If the cities of the Indus Valley astonish us because of what they achieved on land, then Nan Madol leaves us with an even more astonishing question. How does an ancient civilization build an entire stone city in the middle of the ocean? Not beside the ocean, not overlooking the sea, but directly on top of it. Scattered across the eastern edge of the Pacific Ocean lies the lush volcanic island of Pohnpei, one of the islands of the Federated States of Micronesia. From above, it appears like countless other tropical islands, covered with dense rainforest, surrounded by brilliant turquoise lagoons, protected by coral reefs, and isolated by thousands of kilometers of open sea. At first glance, nothing about this peaceful paradise suggests one of the greatest engineering mysteries on Earth. Then the jungle suddenly opens. Massive black stone walls emerge from the vegetation. Towering columns of volcanic basalt stand stacked one upon another, with astonishing precision. Narrow canals weave between carefully constructed artificial islands. Ancient temples rise from the water. Royal compounds remain enclosed behind enormous defensive walls. Ceremonial platforms, sacred tombs, meeting halls, residences, and religious structures stretch across more than 90 man-made islets connected by waterways that still flow through the ruins today. The entire complex appears almost unreal. Visitors often describe their first sight of Nan Madol as stepping into another world. It has been called the Venice of the Pacific. Others have compared it to an ancient Atlantis hidden among tropical islands. Yet neither comparison fully captures its uniqueness. Because unlike Venice, Nan Madol was not built gradually over centuries by an expanding commercial republic. And unlike Atlantis, Nan Madol is not a legend. It is absolutely real. The mystery begins with the stone itself. The city was constructed almost entirely from enormous basalt columns formed naturally by ancient volcanic eruptions. These dark stone prisms resemble gigantic logs cut from solid rock, some stretching several meters in length and weighing between 5 and 50 tons. Imagine standing before one of these enormous stones. Now imagine moving thousands of them, without steel cranes, without trucks, without concrete, without iron tools, without draft animals, without modern roads, and without any known machinery capable of lifting such incredible weight. That is exactly what the builders of Nan Madol accomplished. Researchers estimate that hundreds of thousands of tons of basalt were transported from quarries located in different parts of Pompeii before being assembled into the city's monumental walls. Even today, no one can explain every detail of how this extraordinary feat was achieved. Archaeologists believe the builders most likely used an ingenious combination of wooden sledges, rollers, ropes woven from strong plant fibers, floating rafts, carefully timed tides, and immense coordinated human labor. It is entirely possible, but understanding that something is possible does not make it easy. Imagine organizing thousands of workers across many generations. Imagine transporting stones heavier than modern trucks through dense rainforest and across shallow lagoons. Imagine positioning them with enough accuracy to create walls more than 7 meters high that have survived centuries of tropical storms, earthquakes, humidity, and rising sea levels. This was not random construction. It required planning, leadership, engineering, logistics, mathematics, and perhaps most importantly, a civilization capable of inspiring thousands of people to work toward a common vision that would outlive every one of them. The deeper archaeologists studied Nan Madol, the stranger it became. Unlike most ancient capitals, It was not built upon fertile farmland. There was very little space for agriculture. Fresh drinking water was limited. Almost every basic necessity, including food, timber, and other supplies, had to be transported from elsewhere on the island. From a practical perspective, it seems like one of the most difficult places imaginable to build a capital city. So why choose this location? Many historians believe the answer lies in power. By constructing the royal and religious center upon isolated artificial islands, the ruling Saudler dynasty physically separated itself from the general population. Anyone wishing to meet the rulers had to travel by canoe through narrow canals controlled by the government. The water itself became part of the city's defense. The surrounding lagoon became a natural barrier. The architecture reinforced authority. Every visitor approaching Nan Madol would immediately understand that they were entering a place unlike any ordinary village. This was the heart of political power, the center of religion, the symbol of absolute authority. Yet architecture alone does not explain the city's remarkable complexity. Each artificial island served a specific purpose. Some were reserved for royal families, others housed priests responsible for conducting sacred ceremonies. Certain compounds contained workshops where skilled craftsmen created valuable objects. Separate areas stored food supplies and tribute collected from surrounding communities. Massive tomb complexes honored powerful rulers whose influence extended across much of Pompeii. Everything appears carefully organized. Nothing suggests accidental growth. Nan Madol was designed. Every canal, every wall, every platform, every ceremonial courtyard. The city functioned almost like a carefully planned machine built from stone and water. Then come the legends. Long before archaeologists began excavating the ruins, the people of Pompeii preserved stories explaining the city's extraordinary construction. According to local traditions, two mysterious brothers arrived from distant lands possessing supernatural knowledge. Seeking a place to establish a sacred center, they summoned enormous stones through magical powers. Some stories claim the basalt columns floated through the air. Others describe invisible forces lifting impossible weights into place. Still others tell of giant eels, spirits, or divine beings assisting with construction. Modern historians do not interpret these stories as literal engineering manuals, but legends often preserve emotional truth, even when symbolic. Imagine future generations looking upon walls so immense that they could no longer understand how their ancestors built them. How would they explain such achievements? Perhaps only magic seemed large enough to match the greatness before their eyes. Interestingly, similar patterns appear across the ancient world. The pyramids inspired legends. Stonehenge inspired legends. The temples of Baalbek inspired legends. Whenever later civilizations encounter engineering achievements beyond their own experience, myth often fills the gaps left by forgotten knowledge. Nan Madol is no exception, yet the real history may be even more impressive than the myths. Archaeological evidence strongly supports the conclusion that the ancestors of today's Pompeian people built the city themselves. No lost superhuman civilization is required. No visitors from another world are needed. What Nan Madol truly demonstrates is something far more inspiring. Human beings, working together with intelligence, patience, organization, and determination, are capable of accomplishing feats that later generations may mistakenly believe impossible. But the city's story does not end with its construction. Like every great civilization, Nan Madol eventually entered decline. By the early 17th century, the Saudler dynasty lost power following the arrival of a warrior named Archaeological, whose victory transformed the political landscape of Pompeii. Gradually, the ceremonial capital was abandoned. The canals became quiet. The temples fell silent. Rain, salt water, roots, moss, and tropical vegetation slowly reclaimed the stone walls. Birdsong replaced royal ceremonies. Trees grew where rulers once walked. For centuries, the city waited in silence while the outside world remained almost completely unaware of its existence. When European explorers eventually encountered Nan Madol, many struggled to believe such a monumental city could have been created by Pacific Island societies. Some proposed astonishing theories. They suggested Egyptians had crossed the oceans. Others claimed the builders came from South America. Some insisted survivors from Atlantis must have constructed the city. Still others imagined mysterious lost races possessing forgotten technologies. These theories attracted attention because they sounded dramatic, but they overlooked something far more extraordinary. The true builders were the ancestors of the islanders themselves. By refusing to believe this, outsiders underestimated one of the greatest engineering achievements ever accomplished by an oceanic civilization. Modern archaeology continues uncovering new details about Nan Madol. Many structures remain only partially excavated. Dense vegetation conceals unexplored sections. Some ruins lie beneath shallow water where marine archaeology has only begun its work. Advanced mapping technologies continue revealing architectural features hidden beneath centuries of sediment and plant growth. Researchers still debate exactly how labor was organized, how construction evolved across generations, how political authority functioned within the city, and how thousands of enormous stones were transported with such remarkable precision. Each new discovery answers one question while creating 5 more. Standing among the towering basalt walls today, surrounded by quiet canals reflecting the tropical sky, it is impossible not to feel that you are walking through the remains of a civilization that refused to accept limitations. They transformed water into land. They turned volcanic stone into monuments. They created a capital where none should have existed. And then, almost as quietly as it appeared, the city slipped into history, leaving behind only black stone, whispered legends, and one unforgettable mystery. Nan Madol reminds us that the greatest civilizations are not always the largest. They are often the ones bold enough to attempt what everyone else believes cannot be done. Even after centuries of research, the stone city of the Pacific continues to challenge historians, engineers, and archaeologists alike, proving that humanity's greatest achievements are sometimes found not in the centers of famous empires, but on distant islands surrounded by an endless sea, where an ancient civilization built a city that still refuses to surrender all of its secrets. The forgotten civilizations of the Amazon, the cities the jungle erased from history. For centuries, the Amazon rainforest was described as one of the last untouched wildernesses on Earth. It was imagined as a vast green ocean where nature had always ruled without challenge, where enormous rivers cut through endless forests, where human communities survived only in small scattered groups, and where no great civilization could ever have risen because the soil was too poor, the climate too harsh, the vegetation too dense, and the landscape too difficult to control. This belief became deeply rooted in modern history. The great civilizations of the ancient world, historians said, were born where the environment supported them. Egypt grew beside the Nile. Mesopotamia rose between the Tigris and Euphrates. The Indus civilization flourished along fertile river plains. China developed beside the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. But the Amazon seemed different. Its rains were too heavy. Its forests were too thick. Its soils were believed to lose nutrients too quickly. Its rivers flooded unpredictably. Its heat, insects, diseases, and isolation appeared to make large-scale urban civilization nearly impossible. For generations, this conclusion seemed unquestionable. Then the trees began to reveal what they had been hiding: roads, canals, platforms, artificial islands, fortified settlements, raised agricultural fields, ceremonial plazas, massive geometric earthworks, entire networks of cities buried beneath one of the densest forests on the planet. What archaeologists are discovering today is transforming the Amazon from an untouched wilderness into something far more astonishing. A landscape that was not merely inhabited by ancient peoples, a landscape that was designed by them. The mystery begins with a simple question. If millions of people once lived in the Amazon, where are their pyramids, stone palaces, and monumental ruins? The answer lies in the materials they used. Unlike the builders of Egypt, Greece, Rome, or the Andes, many Amazonian civilizations did not construct their cities primarily from stone. They built with wood, earth, clay, bamboo, palm leaves, and other materials drawn directly from the rainforest. These materials were practical, abundant, and perfectly suited to the environment, but they were not permanent. When communities disappeared, wooden houses collapsed, roofs decayed, walls dissolved into the soil, trees returned, roots broke through plazas, vines covered roads, rivers changed direction. Within a few generations, an abandoned settlement could disappear so completely that later explorers might walk directly across it without realizing a city had ever existed. The jungle did not destroy every trace. It simply hid the evidence beneath life itself. For a long time, archaeologists were trapped by what they expected ancient civilizations to look like. They searched for stone monuments. They looked for towering ruins. They expected ancient cities to resemble those found in Europe, North Africa, or the Middle East. When those familiar forms did not appear, many concluded that no complex civilizations had existed. But Amazonian societies followed a different architectural tradition. Their cities were shaped from earth, and earth can remain invisible for centuries. One of the greatest breakthroughs came when large geometric structures began appearing in areas where forests had been cleared. Across parts of Brazil, Bolivia, and neighboring regions, aerial photographs revealed enormous circles, squares, rectangles, and octagons carved into the landscape. Some measure hundreds of meters across. Others are surrounded by deep ditches and raised embankments. Many are connected by long, straight roads stretching through what is now farmland or jungle. These structures are known as geoglyphs. Their exact purposes remain debated. Some may have served ceremonial functions. Others may have marked important gathering places, defended communities, organized political space, or separated sacred areas from ordinary settlements. Whatever their meaning, they required planning on a remarkable scale. Imagine ancient workers clearing large areas of forest without modern machinery. Imagine digging enormous ditches with stone and wooden tools. Imagine coordinating hundreds or thousands of people to create geometric designs so large that their full shape could only be understood from above. The people who built these earthworks were not wandering randomly through the rainforest. They had leadership. They had shared beliefs. They had labor systems. They had the ability to organize communities across large territories. The more researchers looked, the more the old image of the Amazon began to collapse. In the upper Xingu region of Brazil, archaeologists uncovered a complex network of ancient settlements connected by carefully planned roads. These were not isolated villages. They formed organized regional systems. Central settlements were arranged around large plazas. Roads radiated outward in deliberate directions. Smaller communities were positioned around larger political and ceremonial centers. Defensive earthworks protected important areas. Bridges and causeways crossed wetlands. Managed fields surrounded settlements. The entire landscape appears to have functioned as a low-density urban network, a form of civilization unlike the crowded stone cities found elsewhere. Instead of one massive city surrounded by empty countryside, the people of the Amazon may have created clusters of interconnected communities spread across the forest. The trees were not the absence of civilization. They were part of its design. This changes everything. A city does not always need towering buildings. It can exist as a network of roads, villages, farms, ceremonial centers, forests, and waterways carefully connected into one functioning system. The ancient Amazon may have contained many such systems. Each region adapted differently. Some civilizations built raised platforms to protect homes from seasonal floods. Others created canals to control water. Some constructed fish ponds and dams. Others designed causeways across wetlands. Some built fortified villages. Others shaped the forest itself into a living source of food, medicine, fuel, and construction materials. The deeper archaeologists investigate, the clearer it becomes that Amazonian peoples did not simply live inside the rainforest, they transformed it. One of the greatest pieces of evidence is a mysterious substance known as terra preta. The words mean dark earth. Across many parts of the Amazon, researchers have found large areas of black, fertile soil surrounded by naturally weaker tropical soil. This dark earth contains charcoal, animal bones, food waste, pottery fragments, plant remains, and other materials added by human communities over long periods of time. It was not created by nature alone. It was engineered. The people of the Amazon discovered how to enrich poor soil through the careful use of charcoal and organic material. This process allowed nutrients to remain in the ground rather than washing away during heavy rains. The soil became rich enough to support intensive agriculture. Even today, centuries after the communities that created it disappeared, Terra Preta remains extraordinarily fertile. Modern farmers often seek it because crops grow better in it. Think about the significance of this. Ancient Amazonian communities solved one of the region's greatest environmental challenges. They did not simply accept poor soil. They changed it. They created fertile land where fertile land should not have existed. This was not accidental waste accumulation. In many locations, the scale and composition of Terra Preta suggest deliberate long-term soil management. The people who made it possessed ecological knowledge developed across generations. They understood fire. They understood decomposition. They understood how charcoal interacted with soil. They understood how to build fertility slowly and preserve it. This knowledge may have supported large populations for centuries, and Terra Preta is only one part of the story. Botanical research has revealed that many regions of the Amazon contain unusually high concentrations of useful tree species: Brazil nuts, cacao, palm trees, fruit-bearing plants, medicinal trees, species valuable for timber, oil, fibers, and food. These patterns are not always random. In many areas, they appear near ancient settlement sites. This suggests that past communities planted, protected, and spread useful species across the landscape. Over generations, human choices changed the composition of the forest. What looks like wild jungle may actually be an abandoned orchard on an enormous scale. The forest itself may be archaeological evidence. This is one of the most powerful ideas to emerge from modern research. The Amazon is not simply a place where people once lived. Parts of it may be a cultural landscape created through thousands of years of human management. Ancient communities encouraged certain plants. They controlled burns. They opened clearings. They redirected streams. They created gardens. They improved soils. They managed animal habitats. They shaped riverbanks. They built islands. They turned the forest into a system that supported human life without completely destroying the natural environment. This was civilization expressed through ecology. Yet for centuries, outsiders failed to recognize it. The earliest European explorers may have witnessed the final moments of this lost world. In the 16th century, Spanish expeditions traveled along the Amazon River and described large settlements, powerful chiefs, extensive fields, organized communities, abundant food, and heavily populated riverbanks. One of the most famous accounts came from the expedition of Francisco de Orellana, which crossed much of the Amazon River in the 1540s. Members of the expedition reported towns stretching for long distances along the river. They described fortified communities. They wrote of large populations and organized resistance. They encountered regions where food was plentiful and settlements appeared close together. For centuries, many historians dismissed these accounts. They assumed the explorers exaggerated. Perhaps, they argued, the men were hungry, frightened, confused, or trying to impress royal sponsors with dramatic stories. Later European visitors found fewer people and little evidence of large cities. The Amazon seemed too empty to match the early descriptions. Therefore, the accounts were considered unreliable. Modern archaeology has forced historians to reconsider. The first explorers may have seen societies shortly before they collapsed. The disaster was not caused mainly by military conquest. It was caused by disease. When Europeans reached the Americas, they carried illnesses that had developed across populations living with domesticated animals for thousands of years. Smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus, other infections for which indigenous communities had no inherited immunity. These diseases spread faster than the explorers themselves. They traveled along rivers. They moved through trade networks. They passed between villages. They reached communities that had never seen a European face. The consequences were catastrophic. Entire settlements may have lost the majority of their populations within a short short period. Leaders died, farmers died, builders died, healers died, children died. Knowledge disappeared with the people who carried it. Fields were abandoned. Canals became blocked. Roads vanished beneath vegetation. Wooden buildings collapsed. Managed forests grew wild. Within decades, thriving population centers became silent clearings. Within centuries, even the clearings disappeared. Later explorers entered a landscape that had already experienced one of the greatest demographic collapses in human history. They mistook the aftermath of catastrophe for the natural condition of the region. They saw emptiness and assumed there had never been abundance. They saw forest and assumed there had never been cities. They saw small surviving communities and assumed large societies had never existed. The civilization had not failed because the Amazon could not support it. The civilization had been shattered so rapidly that its remains disappeared before outsiders understood what had been lost. This may be one of the greatest historical misunderstandings ever created. The image of the Amazon as empty wilderness was born partly because the societies that shaped it had already collapsed. Recent technology is now allowing researchers to see beyond the trees. One of the most powerful tools is LiDAR. LiDAR works by sending thousands or millions of laser pulses from an aircraft toward the ground. Most pulses strike leaves and branches, but some reach the soil beneath the forest canopy. By analyzing these returns, researchers can digitally remove the vegetation and create detailed maps of the hidden landscape. What appears from the ground to be an ordinary forest can suddenly reveal walls, ditches, roads, mounds, plazas, canals, terraces, platforms, and entire settlement systems. The results have been extraordinary. In parts of Bolivia, researchers identified enormous settlement networks hidden beneath dense vegetation. These included large ceremonial centers built on raised platforms, connected by straight causeways stretching across the landscape. Massive earth pyramids rose above surrounding wetlands. Reservoirs stored water. Canals managed seasonal floods. Defensive walls protected important areas. Smaller settlements surrounded larger centers, suggesting political organization across wide territories. This was not a collection of temporary camps. It was urbanism, a unique Amazonian form of urbanism, shaped by water, forest, earth, and climate. The scale of these discoveries is forcing historians to reconsider how many people may have lived in the Amazon before European contact. Estimates remain debated. The region was enormous, and population density varied greatly. Some areas may always have been lightly inhabited. Others may have supported large and highly organized societies. But it is increasingly difficult to maintain the old belief that the Amazon was almost empty. Millions of people may have lived across the wider basin. They spoke different languages, followed different spiritual traditions, built different types of settlements, developed different political systems. Some communities may have formed powerful chiefdoms. Others may have been organized into regional alliances. Some may have fought wars. Others may have relied more heavily on trade and ritual cooperation. There was no single Amazonian empire controlling the entire rainforest. The Amazon was too large and diverse for one civilization to dominate it all. Instead, it contained many civilizations, many cultures, many worlds. Some rose beside rivers. Some flourished in upland forests. Some mastered wetlands. Some built earthworks in dry regions. Some created networks extending across hundreds of kilometers. Their histories are only beginning to return. The Amazon also challenges how we define the word advanced. Modern people often measure civilization through stone architecture, metal weapons, writing systems, and centralized states. But Amazonian societies developed other forms of sophistication. They mastered difficult ecosystems. They created productive soils that remain fertile after centuries. They designed water systems adapted to extreme seasonal change. They managed forests without removing them entirely. They built cities that worked with nature rather than replacing it. They produced vast cultural landscapes using materials that eventually returned to the earth. Their achievements were easier for time to erase, but they were not less intelligent. In some ways, their knowledge may be especially valuable today. Modern civilization struggles with soil loss, deforestation, climate instability, and unsustainable agriculture. Ancient Amazonian communities found ways to support large populations while maintaining diverse forests over long periods. Not every practice was perfect. Not every society lived in complete harmony with nature. But their methods reveal that civilization does not always need to destroy its environment in order to survive. Some Amazonian societies may have developed a relationship with the forest that modern science is only beginning to understand. There are still many mysteries. What languages did the builders of the great earthworks speak? How were their societies governed? Did rulers control labor through force, religion, trade, or shared tradition? What ceremonies took place inside the giant geometric enclosures? Why were some roads built so perfectly straight through difficult terrain? How far did trade networks extend? Did distant communities exchange ideas across the entire basin? How many settlement systems remain undiscovered? And how many have already been destroyed by modern agriculture, mining, roads, dams, logging, and urban expansion before archaeologists could study them? This last question is urgent. The same deforestation that reveals ancient earthworks can also destroy them. Once trees are removed, heavy machinery cuts through mounds and ditches. Roads divide archaeological sites. Farms flatten structures that survived for centuries. Illegal mining damages sacred landscapes. Every year, evidence may be disappearing before it is documented. The Amazon is opening its hidden past at the same moment its future is under threat. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not whether advanced civilizations existed there. The evidence is becoming too strong to ignore. The greater mystery is how enormous the lost world may have been. Imagine flying above the Amazon thousands of years ago. Instead of uninterrupted forest, you might see smoke rising from settlements, straight roads cutting through green landscapes, canoes moving along managed waterways, fields growing on raised platforms, ceremonial plazas filled with people, markets exchanging food, pottery, feathers, stone, medicines, and stories, children learning the names of rivers, priests observing the stars, leaders gathering communities for festivals, farmers enriching black soil, engineers controlling floods, foresters shaping future generations of trees. The ancient Amazon may have been filled with life on a scale that modern history never imagined. Then disease arrived. The people vanished. The roads closed. The roofs collapsed. The forest returned. Centuries passed, and the world forgot. Today, each newly discovered earthwork is like a sentence from a book once believed to be empty. Each patch of dark earth is evidence of hands that improved the land. Each ancient road reveals communities that once needed to reach one another. Each concentration of useful trees may mark the edge of a forgotten village. Each hidden platform may have held a house, a temple, a council hall, or the home of a leader whose name will never be known. The Amazon did not erase these civilizations completely. It absorbed them. Their walls became soil. Their gardens became forest. Their roads became roots. Their cities became hills. Their history became nature. That is what makes the lost civilizations of the Amazon so different from every other mystery in this journey. In Egypt, civilization remains visible in stone. In Cappadocia, it survives beneath the ground. In Nun Madol, it stands above the ocean. But in the Amazon, civilization may still be alive all around us, hidden inside the forest it helped to create. The trees are growing from ancient settlements. The soil is carrying the memory of ancient farmers. The rivers are flowing beside forgotten cities, and beneath the green canopy may lie thousands of ruins that no human being has seen for centuries. The Amazon is not empty. It is not untouched. It is one of the largest archaeological landscapes on Earth, and every new discovery delivers the same powerful warning. History can disappear without leaving behind broken towers or fallen statues. Sometimes an entire civilization can vanish so completely that future generations mistake its greatest achievement for wilderness. Great Zimbabwe, the African civilization history tried to erase. There are many ways for a civilization to disappear. Some are buried beneath deserts. Some are swallowed by forests. Some sink beneath rising seas. Some collapse after war, drought, disease, or the slow movement of trade routes. But Great Zimbabwe was lost in a different and far more disturbing way. Its walls remained standing. Its towers remained visible. Its artifacts remained beneath the soil. Its descendants remained in the surrounding lands. The civilization was never truly invisible. Instead, powerful outsiders looked directly at its ruins and refused to believe what they were seeing. In the highlands of southern Africa, beneath an enormous open sky, stand the remains of a stone city that once controlled wealth, trade, cattle, land, and political influence across a vast region. Its builders raised walls without mortar. They shaped thousands upon thousands of granite blocks. They constructed royal spaces, sacred areas, residential compounds, elevated centers of authority, and one of the most impressive stone enclosures anywhere in Africa. They created an urban and political center connected to distant trading networks reaching toward the Indian Ocean and beyond. And yet, when Europeans arrived centuries later, many insisted that Africans could not possibly have built it. The true mystery of Great Zimbabwe is therefore not simply how the civilization rose or why it declined. The deeper mystery is why so many people worked so hard to steal its history from the people who created it. To understand the power of Great Zimbabwe, we must first stand before its walls. The site lies in the modern nation of Zimbabwe, surrounded by open grassland, rounded hills, and scattered granite formations. From a distance, the ruins appear almost like part of the natural landscape. Then the scale becomes clear. Stone walls curve across the ground. Narrow passageways lead between towering structures. Enclosures open into spaces that may once have held rulers, advisors, religious leaders, craftsmen, guards, families, and visitors arriving from distant lands. High above the valley, the hill complex rises across a granite outcrop, dominating the surrounding countryside. Below it stands the great enclosure, the most famous structure at the site, surrounded by an immense outer wall built from carefully shaped stone. Between them lies the valley ruins, where numerous compounds reveal that Great Zimbabwe was not one isolated monument, but a living urban center spread across a large area. It was a city, a capital, a sacred place, a political statement made from stone. The name Great Zimbabwe carries its own history. The word Zimbabwe is commonly connected to Shona expressions referring to houses of stone or respected stone dwellings. The name does not describe something foreign. It does not point toward an unknown race from another continent. It belongs to the cultural world of the people whose ancestors created the city. The modern country of Zimbabwe later chose the name as a symbol of identity and restored heritage. That decision carried enormous meaning. A place once used by colonizers to deny African achievement became the name of an independent African nation. But long before that restoration, the city had already lived through centuries of greatness. Great Zimbabwe rose gradually from older local traditions. People had inhabited the wider region long before the stone walls reached their most impressive form. Communities raised cattle, cultivated crops, produced pottery, worked metals, and participated in regional trade. As population, wealth, political authority, and religious significance expanded, so did the settlement. Between approximately the 11th and 15th centuries, Great Zimbabwe developed into the center of a powerful state. At its height, thousands of people may have lived within and around the city. The exact population remains debated, but the settlement was unquestionably one of the largest and most influential centers in southern Africa during its time. Its power was built upon several foundations. Cattle were among the most important. In many southern African societies, cattle represented far more than food. They were wealth. They were social status. They were used in marriage exchanges. They strengthened alliances. They supported political power. They connected households, lineages, leaders, and communities. A ruler who controlled large herds controlled not only animals but relationships and obligations. The sound of cattle moving across the landscape may once have been as important to Great Zimbabwe as the sound of markets in other ancient capitals. Agriculture supported the population. Farmers cultivated crops suited to the regional environment. Communities stored grain. They managed seasonal changes. They adapted to the opportunities and limitations of the land. Yet Great Zimbabwe was not only an agricultural center. Its influence grew through trade. Gold mined in the interior moved eastward toward coastal trading settlements. Ivory, animal skins, and other valuable products also traveled through regional networks. In return, foreign goods entered the African interior. Archaeologists have discovered glass beads, ceramics, and other objects showing connections with distant parts of the world. Some goods came through ports along the East African coast. From there, merchants connected southern Africa to wider Indian Ocean networks involving regions such as Arabia, Persia, India, and parts of Asia. This meant that Great Zimbabwe was not isolated. It was part of a global system. While European kingdoms were developing far to the north, African merchants and political leaders were participating in long-distance exchange across the Indian Ocean world. Goods moved, ideas moved, technologies moved, stories moved, people moved. A piece of foreign ceramic discovered among the ruins is more than an object. It is evidence of contact. A glass bead is more than decoration. It is a fragment of an economic network extending across mountains, rivers, savannas, coastal ports, and open ocean. Gold from the African interior may have passed through many hands before reaching distant markets. Every stage of that journey required trust, negotiation, protection, transport, and organized authority. Great Zimbabwe stood near the center of this wealth. Its rulers did not need ships of their own to participate in maritime trade. They controlled access to valuable resources and inland routes. They occupied a strategic position within a network connecting the interior to the coast. This wealth helped support monumental construction. The stone walls of Great Zimbabwe were not built by accident. They represented authority. They represented organization. They revealed a society capable of directing labor over long periods. The builders used local granite, collecting stone from the surrounding landscape. Granite naturally breaks into relatively flat layers when heated and cooled over time, making it possible to shape blocks through skilled methods. Craftsmen selected, split, trimmed, transported, and arranged the stones. No mortar held the walls together. Their stability depended upon careful placement, understanding of weight, balance, curvature, and structural pressure. The result was extraordinary. Some walls rise several meters high. The outer wall of the great enclosure stretches in a vast curve, enclosing one of the most remarkable architectural spaces in the region. Its surfaces show deliberate patterns. In certain places, the stonework includes decorative designs formed through changing arrangements of blocks. These details demonstrate that the walls were not created only for defense or enclosure. They carried visual meaning. They communicated order. They displayed skill. They made power visible. Imagine approaching Great Zimbabwe during its height. The city would not have appeared as the silent ruin seen today. The walls may have been surrounded by houses built from materials that have since disappeared. Smoke would have risen from cooking fires. Voices would have filled the compounds. Cattle would have moved through nearby areas. Metal workers would have shaped tools and ornaments. Potters would have formed vessels. Traders would have carried goods through the settlement. Messengers would have brought information from distant communities. Religious ceremonies may have taken place in sacred spaces. Leaders would have received visitors, settled disputes, formed alliances, distributed wealth, and demonstrated authority. The city was alive. Its stone walls were only part of a much larger world. Many of the buildings used by ordinary people were constructed from earth, timber, and thatch. These materials have largely disappeared. As a result, modern visitors can easily imagine the stone structures as empty monuments standing alone. But the ancient settlement would have been far more crowded and complex. The spaces between walls mattered. The houses that vanished mattered. The courtyards mattered. The roads and pathways mattered. The fields beyond the ruins mattered. The city existed through the relationship between stone architecture and daily human life. At the center of many questions stands the great enclosure. Its immense outer outer wall is one of the largest ancient structures in sub-Saharan Africa. Inside, a narrow parallel passage runs between the outer wall and an inner wall. The exact function of this passage remains uncertain. It may have controlled movement. It may have separated sacred and ordinary spaces. It may have supported ceremonial processions. It may have symbolized power through restricted access. Visitors entering the enclosure would have been guided through carefully shaped spaces where architecture influenced emotion and behavior. The towering walls limited vision. Narrow passages slowed movement. Open courtyards created moments of revelation. Such design can transform architecture into ceremony. The enclosure also contains the famous conical tower. This tall, solid structure rises from the ground without any known interior room or doorway. Its purpose remains one of the great mysteries of the site. Some interpretations connect its shape with grain storage structures, suggesting fertility, wealth, or the ruler's ability to provide food. Others propose symbolic associations with authority, masculinity, ancestry, or sacred power. Because no written explanation survives, certainty remains impossible, but its position within the great enclosure suggests importance. It was not built casually. It was meant to be seen. It was meant to mean something. Perhaps everyone living in Great Zimbabwe understood its message immediately. Today, we stand before it with only fragments of that meaning. This is one of the difficulties of studying civilizations whose histories were preserved mainly through archaeology and oral tradition, rather than surviving written archives. A structure can remain. Its meaning can vanish. A symbol can survive. Its language can disappear. A ritual space can still exist long after no one remembers the ceremony once performed there. Yet the absence of written records does not mean the absence of intelligence, history, or complexity. It means the past must be reconstructed through other evidence. Pottery styles reveal cultural connections. Animal bones reveal diet and wealth. Metal objects reveal technology. Beads reveal trade. Settlement patterns reveal political organization. Burials reveal beliefs and social differences. Oral traditions preserve memories, identities, and cultural meanings that stone alone cannot provide. Great Zimbabwe must therefore be understood through many voices. Archaeology is one. Local tradition is another. Historical comparison is another. The landscape itself also speaks. The hill complex may represent the oldest monumental heart of the city, built across and around giant natural boulders. It creates a powerful relationship between architecture and the granite hill. Walls rise between rocks. Passageways twist through narrow spaces. Elevated platforms overlook the valley. From the top, the surrounding land stretches outward in every direction. This position would have offered practical and symbolic advantages. A ruler or religious authority based on the hill could be seen as standing above the wider community. The elevated position created distance. It allowed observation. It suggested closeness to spiritual forces, ancestors, sky, and power. Many civilizations placed sacred or political centers on high ground. Height changes perception. Those below look upward. Those above look outward. At Great Zimbabwe, the natural hill and human architecture combined to create a center that may have appeared timeless. The granite formations were older than humanity. By building among them, the city's leaders may have connected their authority with the permanence of the land. Below the hill complex, the valley ruins contained many residential and political compounds. Different areas may have housed elites, officials, ritual specialists, craftsmen, and other groups. The organization of space suggests social structure. Access may have been controlled. Certain walls may have separated families, ranks, or activities. Some compounds were likely rebuilt across generations as political power shifted. Great Zimbabwe was not designed in a single moment. It evolved. Walls were extended. Structures were modified. New centers gained importance. Old spaces changed function. Like every living city, it carried layers layers of memory. A child growing up there might have walked beside walls built by grandparents or ancestors. A ruler may have ordered new construction to surpass earlier leaders. A ceremonial space may have become more sacred with each generation. Architecture does not only occupy land, it accumulates history. One of the most famous discoveries from Great Zimbabwe is a group of carved soapstone birds. These stylized figures combine bird-like forms with human and symbolic features. They were found in association with the hill complex and became among the most recognizable objects in Zimbabwean heritage. Their exact meaning remains debated. They may have represented royal authority. They may have been connected with ancestors. They may have symbolized spiritual messengers. They may have linked leadership with the sacred qualities of birds capable of moving between earth and sky. In many cultures, birds hold powerful symbolic meaning because they fly above the human world. They can see across distances. They disappear into the sky. They appear to move between different realms. The Zimbabwe birds may have carried such associations. Today, one of these birds appears on the national flag and coat of arms of Zimbabwe. An object once removed from its original setting became a symbol of restored national identity. This transformation reveals how archaeology can become political. Ruins are never only about the past. They influence who controls the present. They shape identity. They support claims of belonging. They can be used to oppress. They can also be used to recover dignity. This political power became painfully clear when Europeans began taking greater interest in Great Zimbabwe. Instead of approaching the site with open curiosity, many arrived carrying deeply racist assumptions. They believed African societies were incapable of building large stone cities. They assumed that any impressive achievement on the continent must have come from outsiders. The ruins did not fit their worldview. Therefore, instead of changing their worldview, they changed the story of the ruins. They searched for foreign builders. Phoenicians were proposed. Arabs were proposed. Egyptians were proposed. Biblical figures were proposed. Some claimed the site had connections to the legendary Queen of Sheba or King Solomon's mines. Others imagined vanished white civilizations. The theories varied, but they shared one purpose. They separated the achievement from Africans. This was not harmless speculation. It served colonial power. If African societies had no great history of their own, colonizers could portray themselves as bringing civilization to a supposedly uncivilized land. If the ancient city had been built by outsiders, Europeans could claim that greatness had always arrived from somewhere else. If local people were described as incapable of monumental achievement, their rights to land, history, and self-rule could more easily be denied. The interpretation of Great Zimbabwe became part of a larger political argument. Colonial systems did not only take territory, they attempted to take memory. Some early explorers damaged the site while searching for treasure. Important archaeological layers were disturbed. Artifacts were removed. Structures were altered. Evidence that might have helped later scholars understand the city was lost forever. Treasure seekers were often more interested in proving a fantasy than preserving the truth. They dug according to expectation. They discarded objects that did not support their ideas. They treated the ruins as a puzzle whose answer had already been decided. The builders had to be foreign. Every piece of evidence was forced into that conclusion. But the earth refused to cooperate. Pottery connected the site to local African traditions. Building methods developed from regional architectural practices. Settlement patterns reflected southern African societies. Artifacts showed continuity with surrounding cultures. There was no convincing evidence of a foreign population arriving to build the city. The deeper archaeologists studied the ruins, the clearer the conclusion became. Great Zimbabwe was built by African people. The ancestors of Shona-speaking communities created, inhabited, and governed it. This conclusion should have been accepted through evidence. Instead, it became controversial because it challenged colonial ideology. Researchers who supported African authorship sometimes faced pressure. Their findings were minimized. Reports were controlled. Public interpretation was shaped to protect political interests. Museums and educational materials could present misleading narratives. The struggle over Great Zimbabwe was therefore not only a debate among archaeologists, it was a battle over whether African history would be allowed to exist. Imagine the arrogance required to stand before an African city surrounded by African artifacts, built from African stone, connected to African traditions, and still insist that Africans could not have created it. This denial tells us more about colonial prejudice than about Great Zimbabwe. The ruins were not mysterious because the evidence was absent. They were made mysterious because the truth was unacceptable to those in power. Over time, professional archaeology increasingly dismantled the foreign builder theories. Careful excavation showed cultural continuity. Dating methods placed the main development of the city within the medieval period, long after some of the imagined foreign civilizations had disappeared. Local pottery and material culture revealed connections with earlier regional sites. Trade goods demonstrated international contact, but trade does not equal foreign construction. A Chinese ceramic fragment does not mean Chinese builders created the city. A Persian bead does not mean Persian rulers controlled it. Foreign objects show exchange. They show that local leaders possessed the wealth and networks needed to obtain distant goods. They do not erase local achievement. This distinction is essential. Civilizations have always borrowed, traded, adapted, and communicated. Egypt imported materials. Rome absorbed ideas from surrounding cultures. European kingdoms depended upon long-distance trade. No one uses foreign objects found in European cities to claim Europeans were incapable of building them. Yet in Africa, evidence of trade was repeatedly twisted into evidence of foreign authorship. The double standard was enormous. Once African construction was accepted, another challenge remained. How should Great Zimbabwe's political system be understood? No surviving written constitution explains how its rulers governed. No royal chronicle lists dynasties. No official inscription records wars, marriages, taxes, or succession. Historians must reconstruct political life through architecture, wealth, oral tradition, and comparison with later societies. The city may have been ruled by a powerful king whose authority combined political and spiritual leadership. Control over cattle, gold, trade, and ritual would have strengthened the ruler's position. Elites may have lived within restricted compounds. Tribute may have arrived from surrounding communities. Regional leaders may have recognized the authority of the center while retaining local influence. Religion likely played an important role. Leadership in many societies is strongest when political power appears connected to ancestors, rain, fertility, land, and sacred order. A ruler who could claim spiritual legitimacy possessed more than military authority. He stood at the center of the relationship between people, nature, and the unseen world. Great Zimbabwe's monumental spaces may have supported such authority. Ceremonies could bring communities together. Restricted areas could create mystery. Stone walls could separate sacred leadership from ordinary life. Foreign goods could demonstrate access to distant wealth. Cattle could display abundance. Architecture, ritual, and economics may have reinforced one another. Power is rarely based on one thing. It is built from relationships. The city's rulers needed farmers. They needed miners. They needed herders. They needed traders. They needed craftsmen. They needed communities willing to recognize the center. Great Zimbabwe was powerful because many systems connected there. Its greatness also depended upon the environment. The region's rainfall, grazing lands, wood supplies, soils, and water sources placed limits on population. As the city expanded, pressure on local resources may have increased. Cattle herds required land. People required food. Buildings required timber. Metalworking required fuel. A large population concentrated in one area could gradually reduce the environment's ability to support it. This may have contributed to decline. But civilizations rarely collapse for one reason. Around the 15th century, Great Zimbabwe's importance diminished. Some people moved elsewhere. Political power shifted. New centers rose in the region. Trade routes changed. Environmental pressures may have made the city less sustainable. Internal political competition may have weakened central authority. Different groups may have sought control over gold and trade. The city did not necessarily experience one dramatic final destruction. There is no need to imagine a single invasion sweeping through the gates while flames consumed every structure. Its decline may have been gradual. A ruler moved. A trading network changed. A community followed new opportunities. A wall was no longer repaired. A compound became empty. A generation left and did not return. Slowly, the center lost its population. Silence replaced authority. This kind of collapse can be more difficult to understand than sudden destruction. A burned city leaves clear evidence. A city slowly abandoned leaves questions. Why did the final families leave? Did they know they were witnessing the end? Did they imagine descendants would return? Did they carry sacred objects with them? Did they preserve memories of the city in oral tradition? Did they continue identifying themselves with the old center even after settling elsewhere? Civilizations do not always disappear when capitals are abandoned. Their people move. Their traditions change. Their political structures transform. Their knowledge continues in new places. Great Zimbabwe's decline did not mean the end of complex states in southern Africa. Other centers emerged. Kingdoms continued. Trade continued. African political history did not stop because one capital lost power. The idea of a complete disappearance is misleading. What ended was the city's position as a dominant center. The society evolved. This is another reason the word lost must be used carefully. Great Zimbabwe was lost mainly to outsiders who did not understand it. Local communities knew the ruins. Oral traditions connected people to the landscape. The stones were not waiting for Europeans to give them meaning. They already had meaning. Colonial explorers often describe themselves as discoverers, but one cannot discover a place known to those already living around it. What outsiders discovered was their own ignorance. This pattern appears throughout history. European travelers entered inhabited regions, renamed places, removed objects, and wrote accounts as though the world began when they arrived. Great Zimbabwe exposes the danger of such thinking. History does not belong only to those who write the first foreign report. It belongs to the people who built, lived, remembered, and inherited. The city's restoration as a symbol of African achievement became especially important during struggles against colonial rule. The ruins proved that powerful, organized states existed in the region long before European domination. They challenged the claim that colonial governments had introduced civilization. They offered a visible link between modern African identity and a sophisticated pre-colonial past. The name Zimbabwe became an act of historical recovery. It declared that the nation would not be named only through colonial language or memory. It would identify itself with the stone city whose builders had been denied for generations. The Zimbabwe bird became another symbol of this recovery. Once removed, displayed, and interpreted through colonial institutions, it returned to national meaning. Its image now represents continuity, ancient skill, sovereignty, the survival of identity despite attempts to erase it. Yet reclaiming the symbol does not solve every problem. Great Zimbabwe still faces challenges. Stone walls built without mortar require careful preservation. Rain, plant roots, temperature changes, and human movement affect the ruins. Tourism creates both opportunity and pressure. Archaeologists must balance excavation with conservation. Removing soil can expose structures to damage. Rebuilding walls risks changing their original form. Every intervention raises questions. How much should be restored? Which period should be represented when the city changed across centuries? How can visitors understand the disappeared houses and daily life, rather than seeing only stone? How should local communities participate in interpretation and management? Who has the right to tell the story? These questions are not unique to Great Zimbabwe. They affect archaeological sites worldwide. But here they carry additional weight because the city's history was once deliberately distorted. Modern interpretation must avoid repeating the old habit of treating local voices as secondary. Archaeology should not become another form of ownership. It should help return return complexity to the past. One of the most important truths about Great Zimbabwe is that its greatness does not depend upon mystery. There is no need to imagine lost technologies. There is no need to invoke visitors from another continent. There is no need to claim giants raised the walls. The actual achievement is powerful enough. African builders created the city using local materials, inherited knowledge, skilled labor, political organization, and generations of experience. This should not make the ruins less astonishing. It should make them more meaningful. When we call an ancient achievement impossible, we often reveal the limitations of our own imagination. The builders of Great Zimbabwe understood stone in ways most modern people do not. They knew which granite would split correctly. They knew how to shape blocks. They knew how to create stable curves. They knew how to control pressure without mortar. They knew how wide a wall needed to be. They understood how to incorporate uneven terrain. They passed this knowledge from master builders to younger craftsmen. The final walls were the result of accumulated human intelligence. No machine replaced judgment. Every stone was handled. Every surface was examined. Every layer depended upon the skill of the previous one. A wall rising without mortar is not simple. It demands precision. If stones are poorly placed, gaps widen. Weight shifts, sections weaken. A tall structure becomes dangerous. The walls of Great Zimbabwe survived because their builders understood the relationship between stone, balance, and time. Some sections have fallen. Others still stand after centuries. Their survival is a form of testimony. The city also reveals the importance of labor. Monuments are often attributed to kings, but kings do not lift every stone. Behind every wall were workers whose names are unknown. Quarrymen split the granite. Carriers moved blocks. Builders arranged courses. Food producers supported the workforce. Potters made vessels. Herders raised cattle. Metal workers created tools. Families maintained households. Traders moved goods. Religious specialists gave meaning to construction. A civilization is never the creation of one ruler. It is the combined work of thousands. The anonymity of those builders should not reduce their importance. Every stone carries their touch. Perhaps some worked willingly as part of community obligations. Perhaps others labored under political pressure. Perhaps construction was connected to ceremony, identity, and pride. The social experience of building remains unknown, but the scale shows that the leadership could coordinate labor across time. The city may also reveal social inequality. Monumental architecture often benefits those in power. Restricted compounds suggest differences in status. Foreign luxury goods were not equally available. Cattle wealth may have been concentrated. Some families possessed greater authority than others. Great Zimbabwe should not be romanticized as a perfect society. No civilization is perfect. Its rulers may have controlled resources. Conflicts may have occurred. Communities may have resisted central demands. Political transitions may have involved violence. The absence of written records does not mean life was peaceful. It means many human experiences remain hidden. Understanding complexity honors the civilization more than turning it into either a primitive society or a flawless golden age. Real civilizations contain achievement and inequality, creativity and conflict, stability and change. Great Zimbabwe was human. That is what makes it important. Another mystery concerns the relationship between gender and power. Some interpretations of the Great Enclosure have proposed associations with elite women, royal wives, initiation, fertility, or court life. Other scholars disagree or caution against assigning one fixed purpose to the structure. The site may have changed function over time. A space used for one ceremony in one century could have served another purpose later. It is tempting to demand simple answers. This building was a palace. That tower represented grain. This enclosure belonged to queens. But ancient cities are rarely so clear. Rooms are reused. Meanings change. Political centers become sacred sites. Homes become tombs. Walls are rebuilt. The best historical interpretation often accepts uncertainty. Uncertainty is not failure. It is honesty. What remains certain is that the architecture communicated power, whether through royal residence, ritual, gendered space, initiation, or economic symbolism. The great enclosure mattered deeply to the society that maintained it. No community invests such labor into meaningless walls. The site's connection to long-distance trade also invites us to imagine the people who passed through it. A merchant arriving from the east may have carried beads or ceramics obtained through coastal exchange. Local traders may have brought gold from mining regions. Interpreters may have helped different language communities negotiate. Gifts may have been offered to officials. Taxes or tribute may have been collected. Foreign goods may have been redistributed by rulers to reward loyalty. Rare objects could strengthen authority because they demonstrated access to distant worlds. A person wearing imported beads was displaying more than beauty. They were displaying connection. The rulers of Great Zimbabwe may have used such goods to make political relationships visible. Wealth becomes power when it is distributed strategically. A leader gives cattle to an ally. A family receives beads through marriage. A local chief offers gold. A religious ceremony displays imported objects. Economic exchange becomes social order. This is how a city can control territory without placing soldiers in every village. Influence can travel through obligation. Great Zimbabwe may have functioned as the center of such a system, yet power based on networks is vulnerable when networks change. If coastal trade shifted, inland centers had to adapt. If gold production moved, political influence moved with it. If new rulers controlled alternative routes, older capitals weakened. The rise of other states in the wider region may have drawn people and resources away. Great Zimbabwe's decline could therefore reflect success as much as failure. The systems it helped develop continued elsewhere. New political centers inherited trade, leadership traditions, and architectural knowledge. One city faded while regional civilization continued. This challenges the dramatic language often used for collapse. The city did not fall into a historical void. Its people became part of future histories. The greatest act of erasure happened centuries later, when outsiders treated African history as though it had no continuity. They imagined each impressive site as an isolated mystery. They disconnected it from living cultures. They separated monuments from descendants. This made Africa appear as a continent of ruins without history. In reality, Great Zimbabwe belongs within a long African story of migration, state formation, trade, agriculture, metalworking, spiritual life, political competition, and cultural creativity. It was not an exception, proving Africans could occasionally build. It was one powerful expression of wider historical development. There were other centers, other kingdoms, other trade networks, other architectural traditions. The continent contained tremendous diversity. Treating Great Zimbabwe as the only impressive pre-colonial African city can unintentionally repeat the same limited thinking. Its importance should open the door to more African history, not stand as a single isolated miracle. The civilization also challenges modern assumptions about writing. Many people mistakenly believe that societies without large surviving written archives had no history. But writing is only one way humans preserve knowledge. Oral traditions can record genealogies, migrations, sacred histories, political claims, ecological understanding, and social law. Architecture can record hierarchy. Landscapes can record labor. Objects can record exchange. Language can preserve ancient relationships between communities. Ritual can carry memory across generations. Great Zimbabwe's history was never completely absent. It existed in forms colonial historians often refused to recognize. The demand for written evidence can become another form of bias when only the records of literate outsiders are accepted. A foreign traveler's account is treated as history. A local oral tradition is treated as legend. Yet written records can exaggerate, lie, forget, and serve power. Oral traditions can also change, but they should not be dismissed automatically. Every source must be studied critically. No source should be accepted merely because it was written with ink. Great Zimbabwe teaches that the archive of humanity is larger than paper. Stone is an archive. Soil is an archive. Language is an archive. Memory is an archive. The body itself can carry cultural history through practice, identity, and inheritance. When these sources are combined, the lost city becomes less silent. We begin to hear fragments, the sound of stone striking stone, the movement of cattle, the bargaining of merchants, the rhythm of ceremonies, the instructions of builders, the conversations of families, the warnings of political rivals, the prayers for rain, the grief when a ruler died, the excitement when foreign goods arrived, the anxiety when resources declined, the final footsteps of those leaving the city. No recording survives. But archaeology allows imagination to be disciplined by evidence. It does not give us every word, it gives us the shape of life. The walls also force us to confront a difficult question. How many other African civilizations were misunderstood, ignored, or destroyed because scholars entered with conclusions already fixed? How many sites were damaged by treasure hunters? How many oral traditions were dismissed? How many objects were removed to distant museums? How many histories were written from colonial offices rather than local communities? Great Zimbabwe is one example of a much larger problem. The global understanding of ancient history has often centered a limited group of civilizations. Egypt is recognized, Greece is celebrated, Rome is studied endlessly, Mesopotamia is called a cradle of civilization. These regions deserve attention. But when the same attention is not given to Africa beyond Egypt, the Pacific, the Americas, or other parts of the world, human history becomes distorted. Civilization appears to belong to a few centers while everyone else waits at the edges. Great Zimbabwe destroys that illusion. It reveals that complex political societies rose in southern Africa through local development. They built monumental architecture. They participated in global trade. They controlled resources. They expressed power through landscape. They created symbols that still carry meaning. This history does not need permission from Europe to be real. It was real before Europeans knew it existed. The ruins also contain a warning for the present. History can be erased even when evidence remains visible. It can be erased through education, through museums, through maps, through language, through repeated lies. If generations are taught that their ancestors built nothing, eventually the absence becomes part of identity. If monuments are attributed to strangers, descendants are separated from their own achievement. If local histories are called myths while colonial theories are called science, power decides truth. Recovering Great Zimbabwe was therefore not simply an academic correction. It was an act of justice. But historical justice requires more than changing one sentence in a textbook. It requires understanding how the false story was created. Why was foreign authorship so attractive? Because it protected a hierarchy. It allowed colonizers to admire the ruins without respecting the people around them. They could celebrate the city while denying African capability. The monument became safe only when disconnected from Africans. Once African builders were recognized, the ruins became evidence against colonial ideology. That is why the debate became so intense. Archaeology had political consequences. The same is true today. The stories societies tell about the past shape the futures they imagine. A child who sees their ancestors represented only as passive, defeated, or primitive receives a different sense of possibility than a child who learns that their ancestors built cities, managed trade, produced art, developed knowledge, and governed complex states. This does not mean history should become propaganda. Past societies should not be invented or exaggerated for pride. Truth is powerful enough. Great Zimbabwe does not need impossible claims. Its real history already overturns the prejudice that tried to erase it. The city was built by African hands. It grew through African political systems. It connected with global commerce while remaining locally rooted. It declined through complex historical processes. Its descendants continued. Its symbols survived. Its name returned. Standing inside the great enclosure today, one might notice how quiet the space has become. The rulers are gone. The craftsmen are gone. The voices of merchants no longer echo between the walls. Grass grows across areas once filled with movement. Birds rest upon stones placed by hands centuries ago. The silence can feel like absence, but it is not empty. It is filled with history. Every curve in the wall reveals choice. Every passage reveals control of space. Every decorative pattern reveals aesthetic intention. intention. Every imported bead reveals contact. Every piece of pottery reveals daily life. Every cattle bone reveals economy. Every carved bird reveals symbolism. The city continues speaking to those willing to listen without prejudice. Its message is simple and devastating. The people whom colonial history described as incapable had already built one of Africa's greatest cities. The people whom outsiders treated as having no past possessed a past carved into stone. The civilization did not need to be invented. It needed to be recognized. The deeper we examine Great Zimbabwe, the more the idea of primitive isolation collapses. We see farmers linked to rulers, miners linked to merchants, inland communities linked to coastal ports, African gold linked to distant markets, local stone linked to global history. The city stood at the meeting point of environment, politics, trade, spirituality, and identity. It was both deeply local and internationally connected. This combination appears throughout human civilization. People build from the land beneath them, while reaching toward worlds beyond them. Great Zimbabwe was no different, and perhaps this is what those who denied its African origin feared most. If Africans had built this city, then the colonial story of bringing civilization could not survive. If organized states existed before occupation, colonial rule could not claim to create political order from nothing. If international trade existed, Africa was not cut off from global history. If monumental architecture existed, African creativity could not be dismissed. The ruins challenged the entire moral structure of empire. A wall can be dangerous when it proves a lie. That is why Great Zimbabwe matters far beyond archaeology. It demonstrates that the past can resist those who try to control it. Documents can be censored. Teachers can be instructed to repeat falsehoods. Artifacts can be removed. Local voices can be ignored. But stone remains. Eventually, evidence accumulates. Eventually, old narratives crack. Eventually, the people once denied their history reclaim it. Great Zimbabwe survived long enough to witness that reversal. The city once stripped of its African identity became the symbol of an African nation. The bird once removed from its sacred setting became a national emblem. The walls once used to justify fantasies became proof of local genius. The civilization history attempted to erase became impossible to ignore. Still, many questions remain unanswered. What names did the rulers use? How did succession work? What ceremonies occurred inside the hill complex? What did the conical tower mean? How did ordinary families experience life beneath elite authority? How far did Great Zimbabwe's political influence truly extend? What conflicts occurred within the city? How did drought, environmental pressure, and trade change interact? What memories survived among communities after abandonment? How many surrounding sites remain insufficiently studied? How many objects removed during colonial times have not returned? These unanswered questions do not weaken the civilization's importance. They remind us that historical recovery is unfinished. Much research remains. New technologies may reveal buried structures. Chemical analysis may identify the origins of beads and metals. Environmental studies may reconstruct ancient rainfall and land use. Careful archaeology may clarify settlement phases. Oral histories may offer perspectives overlooked by earlier researchers. But future work must proceed with humility. The greatest mistake of the past was certainty built upon prejudice. Modern scholarship should not replace one rigid story with another. It should remain open to complexity. Great Zimbabwe's complete history may never be recovered. Too much was lost. Some layers were destroyed by early digging. Organic materials decayed. Written records did not survive. Meanings changed. But enough remains to tell the central truth. A powerful African civilization rose in southern Africa. Its people built monumental stone architecture. Its rulers participated in wide trade networks. Its society possessed organization, skill, knowledge, and identity. Its decline was followed by historical continuity, not disappearance. And centuries later, Colonial ideology attempted to separate the city from its builders. The stones defeated that attempt. They still stand. They stand against the belief that civilization belonged to only one race. They stand against the idea that Africa waited for outsiders to create history. They stand against the arrogance of those who confused ignorance with evidence. They stand as a monument not only to the civilization that built them, but to the survival of truth after generations of denial. Great Zimbabwe is therefore more than a lost city. It is a recovered voice. It is a civilization returning from the prison of a false history. It reminds us that the destruction of the past does not always begin with fire. Sometimes it begins with a sentence. They could not have built this. That sentence can erase generations. It can steal ownership. It can transform descendants into strangers beside their own monuments. But another sentence can begin restoration. They built it. Their hands carried the stone. Their knowledge raised the walls. Their society created the city. Their descendants inherited the memory. Once that truth is spoken clearly, the entire landscape changes. The ruins are no longer evidence of a mysterious foreign race. They become evidence of African achievement. The silence is no longer emptiness. It becomes the silence of a history waiting to be heard. The walls are no longer anonymous. They belong again to the people whose ancestors raised them. And the civilization that history tried to deny returns to its rightful place within the human story. Great Zimbabwe leaves us with one final and powerful lesson. Civilizations are not only lost when their cities fall, they are lost when later generations refuse to believe in them. They are lost when prejudice becomes scholarship. They are lost when conquerors control memory. They are lost when the achievements of one people are assigned to another because the truth threatens those in power. But history, like stone, carries weight. A lie may stand for decades. It may dominate books, museums, governments, and classrooms. Yet beneath it, evidence remains. And when that evidence is finally lifted into the light, the forgotten civilization does more than return. It forces the world to confront why it was erased in the first place. The drowned civilizations beneath the sea, the lost world hidden under the oceans. There is one place on Earth where archaeology has barely begun. It covers most of the planet. It has swallowed coastlines, river valleys, forests, settlements, roads, burial grounds, and entire landscapes once walked by human beings. It hides evidence beneath darkness. Pressure, shifting sediment, salt water, coral, and powerful currents. It is the ocean. When most people imagine lost civilizations, they picture ruins buried beneath deserts, temples hidden inside jungles, or cities covered by volcanic ash. They imagine archaeologists brushing dust from carved stone, entering sealed tombs, or cutting through thick vegetation to reveal forgotten walls. But the greatest archive of lost human history may not be buried beneath the land. It may be resting beneath the sea. Across the world, enormous areas that were once dry ground now lie underwater. During the last ice age, vast quantities of water were locked inside glaciers covering northern Europe, North America, and other regions. Because so much water was frozen on land, global sea levels were far lower than they are today. Coastlines extended far beyond their modern boundaries. Continental shelves that are now submerged were once open plains. Rivers crossed valleys where fish now swim. Forests grew where ships now pass. Animals migrated across landscapes that no longer exist. Human communities hunted, gathered, traded, traveled, built shelters, buried their dead, and raised children on lands that later vanished beneath rising oceans. Then the planet began to warm. The ice melted. The seas rose, not in one single moment, but across generations. A shoreline that had remained familiar for centuries slowly moved inland. Low valleys flooded. River mouths widened. Freshwater lakes became saltwater bays. Islands separated from the mainland. Land bridges disappeared. Settlements near the coast were abandoned. People were forced to move again and again as the sea claimed the world they knew. For some communities, the change may have been slow enough to measure across lifetimes. A grandfather may have remembered fields beyond the modern beach. A mother may have warned her children not to travel toward the drowned forest where her own childhood home once stood. A village may have rebuilt farther inland, only to watch the water rise again decades later. For other communities, Floods may have come with terrifying speed. Storm surges, tsunamis, collapsed glacial lakes, sudden coastal failures, earthquakes, landslides. Entire settlements could have disappeared within hours. The survivors would have carried those memories. They would have told stories of land swallowed by water, cities destroyed by waves, ancestors who refused to leave, mountains that became islands, gods who punished humanity, boats that carried survivors toward a new beginning. These memories may have survived for centuries, transformed into myths, sacred traditions and flood legends. The sea did not only change the map, it may have changed the memory of civilization. This possibility is unsettling because much of early archaeology was built upon what remained above water. Researchers studied caves, riverbanks, dry valleys, deserts, and surviving coastlines. They reconstructed human migration from stone tools and settlement remains found on land. But if some of the most productive prehistoric environments are now underwater, then the visible record may represent only a fraction of the true story. Imagine attempting to understand a modern nation after studying only its mountain villages while every coastal city, harbor, highway, industrial center, and river delta had disappeared. The picture would be incomplete. Population would appear smaller. Trade would seem more limited. Navigation would appear less important. Technology might seem less advanced. Connections between regions would be harder to explain. This may be exactly what has happened to our understanding of prehistoric humanity. Humans have always been drawn to water. Rivers provided drinking water. Estuaries offered fish, shellfish, birds, and fertile soils. Coasts allowed travel. Lagoons provided shelter. Wetlands supplied plants, animals, and raw materials. Beaches made movement easier than thick forest. Natural harbors connected communities. Tidal zones offered reliable food even when hunting failed. For early human societies, the coast was not the edge of civilization. It was often the center of opportunity, yet many of those coastlines no longer exist. They are submerged beneath tens of meters of water. The greatest prehistoric population centers may therefore be hidden in places archaeology has only recently learned how to investigate. Underwater archaeology is difficult, expensive, and slow. A land archaeologist can walk across a site, examine the surface, mark structures, dig controlled trenches, and return repeatedly with relative ease. Underwater archaeologists face an entirely different world. Visibility may be only a few meters. Currents can move equipment. Sediment can bury structures. Marine life covers surfaces. Salt water damages organic material. Diving time is limited. Deep sites require robotic vehicles, sonar mapping, remote sensing, submersibles, and specialized ships. Every hour of research may cost far more than an entire day of excavation on land. The ocean is therefore not empty of evidence. It is simply harder to search. The scale of the problem is enormous. Nearly every continental coastline has changed since the Ice Age. In some places, the sea moved only modestly. In others, it advanced across hundreds of kilometers of land. Southeast Asia once contained a vast exposed region connecting what are now islands and peninsulas. The Persian Gulf may once have been a fertile basin crossed by rivers. The North Sea covered the landscape of Doggerland, which once connected Britain to continental Europe. The coastlines of India, Australia, Japan, the Mediterranean, the Americas and Africa all shifted. Whole worlds disappeared. Each drowned region may contain evidence of human life, not necessarily grand cities with towers and palaces, not necessarily industrial civilizations, but camps, villages, ceremonial grounds, fishing communities, trade centers, burial sites, boat landings, workshops, and perhaps monumental structures built by people whose names have vanished. The absence of skyscrapers would not make these discoveries unimportant. A single complex coastal settlement, dating thousands of years earlier than expected, could transform the history of agriculture, navigation, trade, religion, and social organization. The ocean may not be hiding one Atlantis. It may be hiding thousands of smaller civilizations that together would rewrite the opening chapters of humanity. One of the most famous drowned landscapes is Doggerland. Today, the North Sea separates Britain from continental Europe. Ships cross deep water. Fishing boats drag nets across the seabed. Oil platforms rise above cold waves. waves. But thousands of years ago, much of this region was dry land. Doggerland stretched between what is now Britain, the Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark. It contained rivers, wetlands, forests, lakes, grasslands, and rich hunting grounds. Humans lived there. Animals migrated across it. Communities followed rivers and coastlines. For a long period, Britain was not an island. It was the western edge of a larger European landscape. Archaeologists first began to understand Doggerland through objects pulled from the sea. Fishermen recovered animal bones. Stone tools appeared in nets. Prehistoric antlers and mammoth remains emerged from the seabed. These discoveries proved that the North Sea had once been inhabited land. Modern sonar surveys and geological mapping later reconstructed buried river systems, hills, lakes, and valleys beneath the water. The seabed revealed the ghost of a vanished country. Imagine that landscape before the sea arrived. A broad river may have reflected the evening sky. Families may have built seasonal camps near freshwater lakes. Hunters may have followed deer across open ground. Children may have collected shellfish along old coastlines. Communities may have exchanged stone, food, tools, stories, and marriage partners across distances now divided by water. Doggerland was not an empty bridge used only for migration. It was a homeland. Generations were born there. Ancestors were buried there. Memories were tied to particular trees, hills, rivers, and shores. Then the water began advancing. Marshes expanded. Storms became more destructive. Low ground disappeared. Communities moved toward higher land. The landscape fragmented into islands. Eventually, most of Doggerland vanished beneath the sea. Some researchers have explored the possibility that a massive tsunami known as the Storge event struck the region around 8,000 years ago, caused by an enormous underwater landslide off the coast of Norway. The wave may have devastated surviving coastal communities across parts of the North Sea. The tsunami did not create all the flooding. Sea levels had already been rising, but it may have delivered a final catastrophe to people living on the remaining low islands and shorelines. Imagine survivors standing on higher ground after the water withdrew. The coastline changed. Homes gone. Boats destroyed. Relatives missing. Freshwater contaminated by salt. The familiar world shattered. Such an event would be remembered. It might become a story passed down for generations. A warning about the sea. A tale of divine anger. A memory of a country destroyed in one terrible day. Doggerland shows that drowned lands are not fantasy. They are geological reality. It also reveals how much human history can disappear without leaving obvious monuments above water. But the North Sea is only one example. Far to the east, another enormous drowned landscape once connected much of Southeast Asia. This region is often called Sundaland. During periods of lower sea level, the islands of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and other nearby lands were joined to the Asian mainland through vast plains and river systems. What appears today as a world of separated islands was once a far larger continuous landmass. Rivers may have flowed through valleys now buried beneath the South China Sea and Java Sea. Humans and animals moved across these landscapes. Communities lived along waterways. Forests stretched across regions now divided by ocean. As sea levels rose, the land fragmented. High ground became islands. Populations were separated. Migration routes changed. Coastal communities were forced to adapt. The flooding of Sundaland may have been one of the most dramatic geographic transformations experienced by human beings. A vast world slowly broke apart. People who once traveled over land needed boats. Communities that once shared direct routes became separated by water. Navigation became increasingly important. This environmental pressure may have encouraged maritime skill. The ancestors of later seafaring cultures may have inherited traditions formed during centuries of rising seas. The ocean was not only a destroyer, it became a road. People learned to cross the water that had swallowed their homeland. This possibility adds complexity to the story of lost civilizations. Flooding may erase one form of life while creating another. A farming community displaced from a river plain may become a coastal trading society. An island population may develop superior navigation. A memory memory of loss may become part of religion. A community forced to move may carry crops, languages, technologies, and stories into new regions. Civilizations do not simply disappear, they transform under pressure. The drowned world may therefore survive indirectly in the cultures that emerged after it. Sunderland has attracted many dramatic theories. Some writers imagine a vast advanced civilization destroyed by a sudden flood. Others connect the region with legends of lost continents. These claims often move far beyond existing evidence. There is no established archaeological proof of an industrial or technologically modern civilization beneath the Southeast Asian seas. But such exaggeration can distract from the real and far more important possibility. Large, organized, culturally sophisticated communities may have lived across coastal plains now submerged. They may have practiced early agriculture. They may have developed long-distance navigation. They may have created ritual centers. They may have exchanged goods across enormous distances. They may have built primarily from wood, earth, shell, and other materials unlikely to survive clearly underwater. Their world may have been advanced in the context of its time without resembling modern technology. History does not need impossible machines to become extraordinary. Sometimes one carefully dated settlement is enough. A harbor older than expected, a ceremonial structure beneath the sea, a network of trade goods proving long-distance contact, a burial site revealing complex beliefs, a boat preserved beneath sediment. Such discoveries could change everything. Another drowned region lies beneath the Persian Gulf. Today, the Gulf is a shallow body of water surrounded by deserts, cities, oil fields, and ancient trade routes. But during the Ice Age, when sea levels were lower, much of its floor was dry land. Rivers from Mesopotamia and surrounding highlands may have crossed this basin. Freshwater springs and wetlands may have created fertile environments within a region now covered by sea. Some researchers have proposed that this exposed Gulf basin could have supported human populations for thousands of years. As the ocean advanced, communities may have moved outward toward Mesopotamia, Arabia, Iran, and nearby coasts. This possibility is especially fascinating because the surrounding regions later became home to some of the earliest known cities. Could displaced populations from a flooded Gulf landscape have carried knowledge into emerging settlements? Could memories of a fertile homeland lost to water have influenced later flood traditions? Could the basin have served as a refuge during harsh climatic periods? These questions remain debated. Evidence is difficult to obtain because the relevant landscapes are underwater and often buried beneath thick sediment. Yet the geography makes the possibility impossible to ignore. The Gulf is shallow. Its flooding happened over a long period. People living there would have watched the sea enter the basin. River valleys would have become estuaries. Freshwater wetlands would have turned salty. Habitats would have changed. Communities would have moved. The rising water may have compressed populations around the remaining fertile zones. Such pressure can produce conflict. It can also produce innovation, more intensive agriculture, larger settlements, new political systems, stronger control of water, greater dependence upon trade. Environmental loss may have helped create the conditions that later supported urban civilization. This does not mean one drowned culture directly created Mesopotamia. History is rarely so simple. But the flooded Gulf may represent a missing landscape connecting prehistoric communities with the world of early cities. In the Mediterranean, submerged ruins appear in many locations. Ancient ports lie beneath modern waterlines. Earthquakes lowered sections of coastline. Land subsided. Tsunamis damaged cities. Harbors filled with sediment. Buildings collapsed into the sea. Some underwater sites are well understood. They belong to known Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Phoenician, or other historical civilizations. Others remain more mysterious. Near the coast of Egypt, the remains of ancient settlements, temples, statues, and harbor structures have been discovered underwater. The cities of Thonis Heracleion and Canopus once stood near branches of the Nile and served as important religious and commercial centers. Over time, unstable ground, earthquakes, rising water and soil collapse contributed to their submergence. For centuries, they existed mainly in ancient texts. Then underwater archaeology revealed statues, inscriptions, shipwrecks, coins, ritual objects, and monumental remains resting beneath the seabed. Here was a clear example of cities once considered almost legendary returning through archaeology. Their discovery demonstrates how quickly historical memory can become uncertain when physical remains disappear beneath water. A famous city can become a story can become a legend can be dismissed, then one expedition can bring it back. What other coastal cities may have followed the same path? Not every underwater structure is a lost city. This is important. The human mind naturally searches for patterns. Rock formations can resemble walls. Straight fractures can look artificial. Natural terraces may appear like steps. Underwater erosion can create shapes that seem designed. Once people expect to see ruins, every block becomes evidence. Every line becomes a road. Every unusual feature becomes a temple. This creates one of the greatest challenges in underwater archaeology, distinguishing natural formations from human construction. A responsible investigation asks difficult questions. Are the stones arranged in ways geology cannot explain? Are there tool marks? Are artifacts present? Is there pottery? Are there signs of habitation? Can structures be dated? Does the surrounding landscape support settlement? Are there layers showing human activity? Can multiple experts reproduce the conclusion? Without such evidence, dramatic claims remain speculation. This does not mean unusual underwater sites should be ignored. It means wonder must be joined with discipline. The truth is powerful enough without forcing every mystery into a lost civilization. One of the most debated underwater formations lies near Yonaguni Island in Japan. Beneath the sea stands a massive rock formation containing broad flat surfaces, sharp angles, step-like terraces, and imposing vertical faces. Some observers believe it is largely natural, shaped by geological fractures and erosion. Others argue that ancient humans may have modified parts of it. The debate continues. No universal conclusion has been reached. The site has inspired visions of a sunken monument created by a forgotten civilization. Yet even if the formation is mostly natural, ancient people could still have used it. Humans have always transformed natural landscapes into sacred places. A mountain does not need to be built by people to become a temple. A cave does not need to be artificial to become a sanctuary. A naturally stepped rock beside an ancient coastline could have been carved, visited, worshipped, or incorporated into ritual life. The choice is not always between completely natural and completely human-made. Reality can exist between them. The debate around Yonaguni reveals something important. People are eager to find evidence of a forgotten world. This desire is understandable. The idea of a great civilization hidden beneath the ocean speaks to something deep in the human imagination. It suggests that history is larger than we know. It offers the hope of discovery. It transforms the sea into a locked door. But desire can also distort evidence. When people want Atlantis, they may see Atlantis everywhere. The challenge is to remain open without becoming careless, to accept mystery without replacing it with fantasy, to recognize that uncertainty is more honest than a dramatic answer unsupported by proof. The word Atlantis has shaped nearly every conversation about drowned civilizations. The story originates in the writings of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. He described a powerful island society that fell from virtue, was defeated, and vanished beneath the sea. Scholars have debated the purpose of the story for centuries. Many interpret Atlantis as a philosophical invention, a moral and political tale rather than a literal historical report. Others search for possible inspirations in real events, such as volcanic destruction, coastal flooding, or memories of powerful maritime societies. The eruption of Thera, now Santorini, and the decline of the Minoan world are often discussed as possible influences, though no direct proof identifies them as Plato's Atlantis. The difficulty is that Atlantis has grown far beyond Plato. It has become a symbol, a name attached to almost every underwater mystery, a lost continent, a technologically advanced empire, a source of ancient wisdom, a civilization destroyed in a single night. The more the legend expanded, the farther it moved from evidence. This has sometimes harmed serious underwater archaeology. Real drowned landscapes are dismissed because they sound too much like Atlantis. Careful researchers become associated with sensational claims they never made. At the same time, exaggerated stories attract attention and funding, while slower, evidence-based work receives less public interest. The greatest irony is that reality may be more fascinating than the legend. The ocean does not need one impossible super-civilization. It already contains the remains of countless real human worlds, fishing communities, coastal villages, trading centers, sacred islands, stone quarries, harbors, shipwrecks, burial grounds, flooded forests, roads, homes, places of memory. Each one represents people who believed their world would continue. Each one disappeared from the visible map. Together, they form an underwater history of humanity. The Black Sea has also inspired theories of catastrophic flooding. Some researchers have proposed that rising Mediterranean waters entered the Black Sea basin through the Bosporus, rapidly raising water levels and flooding coastal settlements. Other studies suggest the process may have been less dramatic or more complex. The details remain debated, yet there is broad recognition that ancient shorelines changed significantly. Settlements near old coastlines may now lie underwater. Could memories of flooding in this region have influenced later stories? Possibly. But proving a direct connection between a geological event and a particular myth is extremely difficult. Stories travel. They change. Different floods can produce similar traditions. Communities living near rivers and seas naturally fear overwhelming water. A flood myth may preserve history, symbolism, theology, or all three. The existence of similar stories across different cultures does not automatically prove one global flood. It may reveal something more universal. Humans everywhere understand the power of water. Water gives life. Water destroys. It cleanses. It separates. It carries people away. It creates new beginnings. Flood stories survive because they transform environmental danger into moral and spiritual meaning. Still, the widespread presence of such stories should not be dismissed completely. Some may preserve distant echoes of real events, not precise scientific records, not exact dates, but cultural memories. A coastline lost, a river that changed course, a tsunami, a storm surge, a lake that overflowed, a community that survived by boat. Oral tradition can carry memories across astonishing periods when those memories remain tied to identity and landscape. Indigenous communities in several parts of the world preserve stories describing ancient geographic changes that modern geology has later supported. This does not mean every detail is literal. It means memory can survive longer than historians once assumed. Along the coasts of Australia, some Aboriginal traditions have been interpreted as preserving memories of sea level rise and places now underwater. These stories describe islands that were once connected, shorelines that moved, and landscapes lost to the sea. Researchers approach such interpretations carefully, but the possibility is extraordinary. If oral traditions can carry recognizable memories for thousands of years, then myth becomes another archive of drowned history, an archive expressed through story rather than stone. This forces historians to reconsider the relationship between legend and evidence. For a long time, oral traditions were often dismissed as unreliable. Written records were treated as superior, but writing can also distort. Kings exaggerate victories. Empires erase defeats. Religious texts use symbolism. Travelers misunderstand what they see. Administrators write for political purposes. No source is automatically truthful. Oral tradition changes through repetition, but it can preserve patterns, locations, dangers, and identities with remarkable strength. The key is not to accept every story literally. The key is to listen respectfully and compare traditions with geography, archaeology, and environmental science. Drowned landscapes require this kind of collaboration. Geologists reconstruct old coastlines. Archaeologists identify human activity. Oceanographers study sediment. Linguists trace cultural connections. Geneticists examine population movement. Indigenous knowledge offers place-based memory. Engineers develop sonar and robotic systems. No single discipline can recover the lost world alone. The ocean demands cooperation into operation. Modern technology is beginning to make this possible. Multi-beam sonar maps the shape of the seabed. Side-scan sonar reveals objects and structures. Sub-bottom profiling penetrates sediment to identify buried layers. Magnetometers detect metal and geological anomalies. Underwater drones explore dangerous or deep locations. Autonomous vehicles map huge areas. Satellite data helps reconstruct ancient coastlines. Computer models predict where settlements may have existed. Artificial intelligence can identify patterns in massive datasets. These technologies are transforming the sea from an empty blue surface into a detailed archaeological landscape. But technology alone cannot decide where to search. Researchers must understand human behavior. Where would ancient people settle? Near freshwater sources, at river mouths, beside sheltered bays, on elevated ground overlooking resources, along travel routes, near stone, clay, timber, or food sources. When ancient coastlines are reconstructed, these features can be mapped. A modern seabed may hide an old river terrace. A sandbank may cover a former island. A channel may mark a drowned estuary. By combining environmental models with archaeology, researchers can target the most promising locations. This is slow work. The area is enormous. Funding is limited. Many underwater sites are threatened by development. Pipelines, wind farms, ports, dredging, fishing nets, sand extraction, coastal construction, oil exploration, cable routes, climate change. Every project that disturbs the seabed may reveal archaeology. It may also destroy it. This creates an urgent need for underwater heritage protection. A drowned settlement can survive for thousands of years beneath stable sediment. One industrial operation can erase it in hours. The public often imagines underwater archaeology as treasure hunting. Gold coins, jewels, shipwrecks, lost royal cargo. But the most valuable discoveries may look unimpressive. A wooden stake, a shell midden, a stone blade, a hearth, a fish trap, a footprint preserved in sediment, a fragment of rope, a canoe, a seed. These objects reveal daily life. They tell us how people ate, traveled, worked, and adapted. Gold tells us about wealth. A fish trap tells us how an entire community survived. Organic materials can preserve exceptionally well underwater when buried without oxygen. Wood that would decay on land may survive beneath sediment. Plant fibers may remain. Bones may be protected. Structures may retain details lost at dry sites. The ocean destroys much, but under the right conditions it also preserves. A drowned landscape may contain a time capsule. The challenge is reaching it before currents, erosion, development, or looting cause damage. One of the most important questions is whether complex societies existed earlier than current evidence shows. Göbekli Tepe already demonstrated that large-scale ritual construction appeared before traditional models once expected. What if coastal communities developed other forms of complexity that are now invisible? What if navigation connected distant regions thousands of years earlier than assumed? What if trade networks operated along coastlines now underwater? What if early monumental sites were built near drowned river mouths? What if domestication, agriculture, and social organization developed in regions that later vanished? This does not require an advanced global empire. It requires only one simple fact. Humans often lived near coastlines. Those coastlines moved. Therefore, part of the archaeological record is missing. The consequences of that missing record may be enormous. Consider navigation. For generations, prehistoric people were often described as reluctant travelers who moved mainly by land. Yet reaching Australia required sea crossings far earlier than the rise of written civilization. Island populations across the Pacific eventually mastered voyages covering extraordinary distances. Obsidian and other materials traveled across water in prehistoric times. Coastal migration may have played a major role in the peopling of the Americas. These examples show that ancient humans were not trapped by the sea. They understood it. They observed winds, waves, stars, tides, birds, clouds, and currents. They built watercraft from materials that rarely survive. A wooden boat can disappear completely. The journey it enabled may leave only indirect evidence. Human remains in a distant land. A tool made from foreign stone. A plant species carried across water. A shared myth. A genetic connection. The absence of boats does not prove the absence of sailors. This is especially important when considering drowned civilizations. A maritime culture may leave fewer monumental ruins than a land empire. Its roads were sea routes. Its knowledge lived in memory. Its technology was organic. Its harbors are underwater. Its boats decayed. Its maps were stars. Such a culture could be highly sophisticated and still remain nearly invisible to archaeology. What would an ancient seafaring civilization look like? Not necessarily a kingdom with a single ruler. It might be a network of coastal communities speaking related languages. They might share boat designs, rituals, navigation methods, and trade partnerships. They might exchange shells, stone, pigments, food, marriage partners, and religious ideas. Their identity could be regional rather than centralized. Their power would come from movement. Their knowledge would be measured in routes. Their sacred geography would include islands, reefs, currents, and stars. When sea levels rose, this network could fragment. Some groups would move inland. Others would become island cultures. Different communities would preserve different pieces of the old world. One remembers the flood. Another remembers the ancestral island. Another preserves a boat-building ritual. Another carries a word for a coastline that no longer exists. The civilization survives as fragments. Archaeology seeks the missing whole. The Persian Gulf, Sunderland, Doggerland, the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and the Australian Shelf are only some of the submerged regions drawing attention. Along the coast of India, underwater surveys have explored structures and artifacts near ancient port areas. Some claims have been careful, others have been highly controversial. The challenge remains dating. A stone wall underwater may belong to a known historical period. It may have been part of a harbor. It may be natural. Objects can move through currents. Sediment layers can mix. Without secure context, dramatic conclusions are dangerous. Yet India's long coastline, ancient maritime traditions, and changing sea levels make underwater research essential. The same is true around Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Arabia, East Africa, and many other regions connected by the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean was one of history's great highways. Monsoon winds allowed predictable seasonal travel. Merchants connected Africa, Arabia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. These historical networks were already highly developed by the time written records describe them. Their roots may extend far deeper. Early coastal communities may have built the foundations of later maritime trade. The oldest routes are likely the hardest to find because their ports are now underwater. Imagine discovering a prehistoric harbor beneath layers of sediment, stone anchors, post holes from wooden structures, fish bones, imported tools, shell ornaments from distant coasts, evidence of boats repaired beside a sheltered bay. Such a site could reveal that organized maritime exchange began much earlier than historians believed. This is the kind of discovery that could rewrite civilization without requiring any fantasy. The Americas also contain vast drowned coastlines. During the Ice Age, the Pacific and Atlantic shores were positioned differently. People migrating south may have followed coastal routes. If so, many of their earliest camps are now underwater. This creates a major problem in understanding the first settlement of the continents. Land sites may show only inland branches of a much larger migration. A coastal population skilled in fishing and navigation could move quickly while leaving a scattered archaeological trace. When the sea rose, the route disappeared. This is one reason debates about early migration remain complex. The evidence may literally be beneath the ocean. Along the Pacific coast, steep continental shelves sometimes preserve less exposed land than broad, shallow regions, but even narrow coastal strips could contain important sites. In other areas, vast plains were flooded. Researchers search caves, islands, old river channels, and submerged terraces. Every discovery contributes another fragment: a tool dredged from the seabed, a mastodon bone, a hearth near an ancient shoreline, The evidence is rarely dramatic, but prehistoric history is built from fragments. The sea also hides sacred places. Humans do not settle only for food. They choose landscapes with meaning: springs, caves, promontories, islands, river confluences, rock formations. Places where land meets water often become sacred because they mark boundaries. The coast is a meeting point between worlds: solid earth and moving sea, familiar land and unknown distance, life and danger, departure and return. A prehistoric shrine near an ancient shoreline may now rest underwater. Offerings may remain beneath sediment. Carved stones may face a horizon that no longer exists. Burials may lie near drowned beaches. If such sites are found, they could reveal religious systems older than surviving temples. The emotional importance of drowned landscapes is difficult to measure. For displaced communities, losing land means more than losing resources. It means losing graves, ancestor places, stories tied to hills, sacred trees, hunting grounds, roots, names, identity. When land disappears, a culture must decide how to remember a place it can no longer visit. The lost homeland may become idealized, a paradise, a sacred beginning, a forbidden world beneath the waves. Generations later, descendants may remember only that their ancestors came from the sea. This pattern appears in many traditions. Not all reflect real submerged lands, but some may. Migration myths often compress complex history into symbolic stories. A people came from an island. A god led them across water. Ancestors escaped a flood. A sacred mountain was the only land left. The literal details may change. The emotional core may preserve displacement. One of the most powerful ideas in archaeology is that myth and landscape can be studied together. A story mentioning a drowned valley may guide researchers toward an old shoreline. A place name may preserve the memory of water. A ritual journey may follow an ancient migration route. The past is not stored only underground. It is stored in language. But there is also danger in using myths carelessly. Outsiders may take sacred traditions, remove them from context, and force them into sensational theories. A complex indigenous story becomes proof of Atlantis. A spiritual metaphor becomes a geological report. A local tradition is used to support a foreign narrative. This repeats the same historical problem seen at Great Zimbabwe. Local knowledge is taken seriously only when it serves someone else's theory. Respect requires allowing traditions to possess their own meaning. Scientific comparison should be collaborative, not extractive. The search for drowned civilizations must avoid turning living cultures into evidence for fantasy. Another challenge is the word civilization itself. What qualifies cities, writing, monuments, agriculture, government, trade, population size? These definitions were often shaped by familiar examples such as Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, and China. But coastal and maritime societies may organize differently. A network of villages can be complex without one capital. Knowledge can be transmitted orally. Authority may be shared. Seasonal gathering places may serve the role of cities. Boats may be more important than roads. Ritual specialists may hold influence without palaces. A society can transform an entire seascape without building stone towers. If archaeologists search only for familiar civilization, they may overlook other forms. The drowned world may require new definitions. Complexity should be recognized through coordination, knowledge, specialization, trade, environmental management, ritual, and social organization. Not only monumental stone. The civilization beneath the sea may not look like Atlantis. It may look like thousands of connected communities whose achievement was understanding water. This understanding could include tidal calendars, fish migration, boat construction, seasonal winds, star navigation, storm prediction, salt production, shell working, wetland management, coastal agriculture, trade diplomacy, knowledge systems adapted to an unstable environment. Such societies could survive for millennia. Their greatest monuments may have been knowledge rather than stone. When the shoreline moved, Their architecture disappeared. Their skills continued. This is why later maritime cultures may preserve clues to earlier worlds. A boat design can survive through tradition. A navigation chant can encode direction. A ritual can mark seasonal winds. A myth can identify dangerous reefs. A language can preserve ancient sea terms. Cultural continuity may bridge the gap between drowned landscapes and living societies. The search, therefore, should not focus only on ruins. It should study people. Modern coastal communities often possess environmental knowledge overlooked by outsiders. Fishers understand currents. Divers know unusual seabed formations. Sailors know places where anchors catch on stone. Oral histories mention submerged structures. Local names identify drowned villages. Many archaeological discoveries begin with such knowledge. A fisherman brings up pottery. A diver notices shaped blocks. A family remembers a story. Professional archaeology arrives later. This pattern reminds us that discovery is often collective. The ocean may be scientifically unmapped while locally known. One of the most haunting possibilities is that some submerged sites remain perfectly preserved beneath sediment. A village abandoned as water advanced. Wooden posts buried in mud. Paths sealed beneath silt. Food remains inside storage pits. Tools left behind. Footprints. A fire extinguished for the last time. Under rare conditions, archaeology can recover moments with extraordinary detail. At a land site, centuries of weather may erase organic evidence. Underwater burial can create a protective environment. If such a prehistoric coastal settlement is found intact, it could reveal daily life with a clarity almost impossible elsewhere. What did houses look like? How were families organized? What foods were prepared? Which plants were used? How were boats built? What objects were traded? How did people respond as the sea approached? Did they move gradually? Did they return seasonally? Did they build barriers? Did they abandon sacred places reluctantly? The final layer of occupation might capture the moment of departure, an archaeology of climate displacement thousands of years old. This would not only illuminate the past, it would speak directly to the present. Modern sea levels are rising. Coastal communities again face erosion, saltwater intrusion, stronger flooding, and forced relocation. Cities may build barriers, villages may move, islands may lose habitable land, heritage sites may disappear. The drowned worlds of prehistory are not only ancient mysteries, they are warnings. The people of Doggerland could not stop the sea. The communities of Sundaland watched land become islands. The inhabitants of ancient coasts around the Gulf, Mediterranean and Pacific adapted or moved. Their experiences remind us that shorelines are temporary. Maps feel permanent only within a human lifetime. Geology sees differently. Civilizations build beside water because water brings life. That same water can erase them. The connection between past and present gives underwater archaeology unusual power. A drowned village is not merely a ruin. It is evidence of human resilience under environmental change. Some people survived through migration. Some developed new technologies. Some lost social structures. Some carried traditions into new lands. Some may have disappeared completely. Studying these responses can reveal how communities adapt when geography itself changes. There is a temptation to romanticize lost civilizations as peaceful, wise, and perfectly connected to nature. The reality was probably more complicated. Rising seas may have caused conflict over land. Displaced populations may have fought existing communities. Resources may have become scarce. Leaders may have used crisis to increase power. Some groups may have cooperated. Others may have collapsed. Technology may have helped some and excluded others. The human response to disaster has never been simple. Drowned archaeology may eventually reveal inequality, elite settlements on higher ground, poor communities in vulnerable areas, defensive structures, mass movement, competition. Ceremonial attempts to control unpredictable nature. Civilization under pressure reveals both generosity and cruelty. The sea may preserve this complexity. Another mystery concerns the speed of cultural change after flooding. When land becomes island, people are separated. Languages diverge. Trade changes. Animals disappear from local environments. Diets shift. Boat technology becomes essential. Political boundaries form. A population once united can become several cultures. Across generations, each group develops its own identity. The drowned homeland becomes shared ancestry. This process may help explain similarities between cultures now separated by water. Archaeology, genetics, linguistics, and oral tradition can sometimes trace the earlier connection. The sea divides, but evidence remembers. In the Pacific, one of humanity's greatest achievements was the settlement of remote islands across enormous distances. Navigators crossed open ocean using stars, swells, winds, birds, clouds, and deep environmental knowledge. They found islands too small to appear on any horizon until the final stages of a voyage. They carried plants, animals, tools, and families. They created societies on isolated land. This accomplishment shows what maritime knowledge can achieve. It also raises a question. How old are the deepest roots of that knowledge? The famous voyages belong to known cultural expansions, but seafaring traditions developed gradually. Earlier coastal peoples experimented with watercraft. They learned from currents. They crossed shorter distances. They improved hulls and sails. They memorized routes. The first steps are almost invisible because boats decay and old coasts drown. The history of navigation may be much older than the surviving record. A major underwater discovery could push that history backward. A preserved canoe, a harbor, a coastal workshop, a group of islands connected through identical materials. Each could reveal forgotten stages in humanity's relationship with the sea. The same is true for trade. Long-distance exchange is often used as evidence of social complexity, but coastal trade may leave limited traces when routes are underwater. Shells found inland prove movement from the sea. Obsidian found across water proves transport. Similar tools across regions suggest connection. Yet the settlements organizing this trade may be gone. We see the products, but not the ports. The effect, but not the center. Drowned archaeology may reveal the missing infrastructure. A harbor community could have functioned as a meeting place between inland and maritime worlds. Farmers brought grain. Fishers brought dried food. Craftsmen exchanged tools. Travelers carried news. Ritual leaders organized festivals. Marriages connected distant communities. Such a settlement could become politically important without becoming a giant city. When the sea rose, its role disappeared from history. Later, inland civilizations may have inherited trade traditions without remembering the original coastal center. This is how lost civilizations influence survivors, not through mysterious machines, through systems, roots, crops, ideas, languages, ceremonies, social relationships. A civilization can vanish physically while remaining culturally present. The final challenge is scale. The ocean is vast. Even when researchers know where an ancient coastline existed, that coastline may stretch for thousands of kilometers. Most of it will never be excavated. Archaeology must select tiny areas. This means the absence of discovery means very little. A lost settlement could lie 1 kilometer away from a survey zone and remain unknown. Sediment may cover it by several meters. Modern development may prevent access. Sonar may miss small features. Artifacts may be scattered. Underwater work requires patience with uncertainty. We may never know how many communities were lost. We may find only fragments, but fragments can transform history. Göbekli Tepe was once hidden beneath a hill. The Indus civilization was unknown until excavation revealed its cities. Amazonian earthworks remained invisible beneath forest. Great Zimbabwe was denied despite standing in plain sight. Each chapter in this journey shows the same pattern. History appears complete until one discovery exposes the missing world. The ocean represents the largest missing world of all. It covers the places humans once inhabited. It hides the opening chapters of migration. It preserves landscapes from before modern coastlines. It contains cities destroyed in recorded history and settlements lost before writing. It is both barrier and archive. The question is not whether human sites lie underwater. They certainly do. The question is how many, how old, how complex, and how transformative they will prove to be. Some discoveries will confirm what scientists already expect: prehistoric camps, fishing sites, drowned forests, ancient shorelines. Others may surprise us: monumental structures, trade centers, ceremonial landscapes, evidence of navigation far earlier than believed. Perhaps one day researchers will locate a large submerged settlement dating to the end of the Ice Age. Imagine the moment. Sonar reveals regular forms beneath sediment. Divers descend. Stone alignments emerge. Artifacts appear in secure layers. Organic material provides dates. The site proves that hundreds or thousands of people gathered there. They built, traded, worshipped, navigated, managed resources. The discovery would not prove every legend. It would not reveal a lost super technology, but it would force history to change. Textbooks would move the timeline. Old assumptions would collapse. The beginning of civilization would become less centered on the surviving land record. Human development would appear more diverse. Coastal cultures would take their rightful place. The greatest discovery might be something no legend ever predicted: an unknown culture with its own architecture, its own symbols, its own burial practices, its own relationship with the sea. A civilization whose descendants survive but no longer remember its name. The ruins would return before the language. As happened in the Indus Valley, we might uncover a world we cannot fully hear: stone without voice, objects without names. Yet even silence would speak. The site would reveal that people gathered there, that they organized, that they believed, that they prepared for seasons, that they faced the rising water. Perhaps the final layers would show adaptation: walls built against floods, homes moved uphill, boats increased, food storage changed, then abandonment. A civilization recording its own ending in soil. The emotional force of such a discovery would be enormous. We often imagine ancient people as distant, but climate displacement would make them familiar. They watched familiar land disappear. They argued about whether to stay. They carried what they could. They left graves behind. They told children about home. They became refugees from a coastline that no longer existed. Their story would not be alien. It would be human. The ocean also reminds us of humility. Civilizations believe they are permanent. Cities build monuments. Governments draw borders. Families inherit land. Maps give names to coastlines. Yet the planet continues changing. Rivers move. Mountains rise. Volcanoes erupt. Deserts expand. Ice melts. Seas advance. The Earth does not preserve human plans simply because humans consider them important. A capital can become a ruin. A forest can become a seabed. A plain can become an ocean. A coastline can become memory. This does not make human achievement meaningless. It makes memory precious. The drowned civilizations beneath the sea are warnings against arrogance. Our world also rests upon temporary geography. Modern cities such as London, New York, Karachi, Mumbai, Shanghai, Alexandria, Jakarta, Miami, and many others depend upon coastlines that are not fixed forever. Future generations may study submerged remains from our own age: roads beneath water, buildings covered in marine growth, tunnels filled with sediment, objects preserved in mud. They may ask why people built so close to rising seas. They may debate whether leaders understood the danger. They may find records of warnings. They may judge our response. The underwater archaeology of the future is being created today. This gives the ancient drowned world moral weight. It is not only about what was lost, it is about what humans do when warned. Did prehistoric communities recognize long-term change? Could they plan beyond one lifetime? Did they cooperate? Did leaders deny the evidence? Did people remain attached to sacred land until escape became impossible? We cannot assume their behavior matched ours, but the questions connect us. The past becomes a mirror. There is another reason the ocean holds such power over imagination. We cannot see through it. A desert reveals ruins through erosion. A forest can be mapped by laser, but the sea maintains mystery. Its surface hides depth. A ship can pass directly above a city without anyone knowing. A storm can expose artifacts, then cover them again. A fisherman may touch history with a net and never understand what was found. The unknown remains physically close but visually unreachable. This creates the feeling that another world exists beneath ours. In a sense, it does. Old rivers continue beneath water. Ancient hills become reefs. Tree stumps remain rooted to drowned soil. Animal tracks may survive beneath sediment. Human landscapes are present, not gone. They occupy a different environment. The sea transformed them, but did not erase their location. This is why the phrase lost civilization can be misleading. The civilization is lost to us. The place still exists. Doggerland is still there beneath the North Sea. Sunderland's valleys still shape the seabed. The Persian Gulf basin remains beneath water. Ancient ports lie where their builders left them. The drowned world is not imaginary. It is inaccessible. Technology is slowly changing that. Future generations may map the seabed with extraordinary precision. They may identify every buried river, every ancient shoreline, every settlement mound. Autonomous vehicles may survey vast areas continuously. Sediment sampling may become faster. DNA may be recovered from underwater deposits. Virtual reconstructions may allow people to walk through lost landscapes. The ocean may eventually reveal a history as detailed as the land. But discovery will also create ethical questions. Who owns a drowned site? The nation whose waters cover it? The descendants of the builders? The country from which the people migrated? Humanity as a whole. What happens when a sacred place lies beneath an international shipping route? Should artifacts be raised or left underwater? How can sites be protected from treasure hunters? Should locations remain secret? Can tourism damage them? Underwater heritage law is still developing. The deeper we explore, the more these questions will matter. Looting is a serious danger. Treasure hunters often search for valuable shipwreck cargo, but prehistoric sites can also be damaged by unauthorized collecting. An artifact removed without context loses much of its meaning. A stone tool by itself may reveal little. Its exact layer, position, surrounding material, and relationship to structures can reveal far more. Archaeology depends upon context. Treasure hunting destroys context. The desire to possess the past can erase the past. This lesson appears repeatedly across all lost civilizations. Early excavators damaged Great Zimbabwe searching for proof of foreign builders. Ancient bricks from Harappa were reused before the city was understood. Jungle sites are destroyed by development. Underwater sites face the same risk. Discovery must be joined with protection. Otherwise, the moment history returns is also the moment it is lost again. Perhaps the most important future discoveries will not be made by one heroic explorer. They will emerge through networks of scientists, local communities, governments, fishers, divers, engineers, historians, and indigenous knowledge keepers. The old image of discovery often centers one person. A man enters a forgotten place. He reveals a city. He names it. He claims fame. But lost civilizations are rarely truly unknown to everyone. Local people may know the site. Fishers may know underwater stones. Communities may preserve stories. Professional recognition comes later. A more honest archaeology acknowledges shared knowledge. It does not treat the world as empty until outsiders arrive. This is especially important in the search for submerged history. Coastal communities live above these landscapes. Their ancestors may be connected to them. Their livelihoods depend upon the same sea. Research should include them from the beginning. The drowned world belongs within living history, not only in laboratories, not only in museums. The final mystery is the largest. How much of the human story has already been destroyed beyond recovery? Some coastlines were exposed to powerful waves for thousands of years. Structures may have broken apart. Organic Organic material may have decayed. Sediment may have moved artifacts far from their original locations. Tectonic activity may have crushed sites. Modern trawling may have disturbed layers. Many settlements may be gone completely. We should not assume every missing chapter can be found. History is not a puzzle where all pieces still exist. Some pieces have dissolved. Some were burned. Some were recycled. Some were eroded. Some lie too deep to reach. The ocean may keep secrets forever. This uncertainty makes every surviving fragment more valuable. A single preserved village can speak for thousands that vanished. One canoe can represent generations of navigation. One burial can reveal beliefs. One shoreline camp can prove migration. One carved symbol can open a forgotten language. Archaeology is powerful because small things change large stories. A civilization does not need to return whole. One fragment can force us to admit that the timeline was wrong. The sea, therefore, stands as the final boundary of historical knowledge. Beyond it lies possibility, not the certainty of fantasy, not proof of every legend. Possibility grounded in geology, human behavior, and growing evidence. We know sea levels rose. We know coastlines drowned. We know people lived near water. We know underwater sites exist. From these facts comes a reasonable conclusion. The archaeological record of civilization is incomplete, perhaps dramatically incomplete. The earliest large gathering places may not all lie on surviving land. The oldest trade routes may follow coastlines now submerged. The first navigation centers may be underwater. The communities that connected continents may have left their homes beneath the sea. The people who survived may have carried only memory, and memory became legend. This is why flood myths continue to fascinate. They may be symbolic, they may be theological, they may describe local disasters, they may combine many events, but behind some of them may stand real human grief. A home lost, a valley flooded, a people displaced, a world ending. Every civilization believes the end of its world is the end of the world itself. For a coastal community watching the sea cover ancestral land, that feeling would be true. Their world did end. The mountains remained. The stars remained. Other people continued living elsewhere. But the landscape that gave meaning to their identity disappeared. A new culture emerged from the survivors. The old one became a story. Perhaps this is the deepest meaning of a lost civilization. It is not only ruined architecture, it is the breaking of continuity. When children no longer learn the names of places because those places are gone, when rituals can no longer be performed at sacred sites, when burial grounds lie underwater, when language loses words tied to a vanished landscape, when descendants remember loss but not detail, the civilization survives biologically, but disappears culturally. The sea can create this kind of loss on an immense scale. Still, humanity adapts. The survivors move. They build again. They carry seeds. They preserve songs. They tell stories. They rename new rivers after old ones. They teach children where they came from. Some memories fade. Others become sacred. Civilization begins again in another place. This cycle may have occurred many times before written history. Human beings are not the descendants of one stable world. We are the descendants of repeated disruption. Ice ages, droughts, floods, eruptions, migration, collapse, renewal. Every population carries the history of movement. The drowned world beneath the ocean may contain evidence of those transitions. It may explain why cultures spread, why languages separated, why technologies appeared in distant regions, why people remembered ancestral waters, why the beginning of civilization seems sudden in some places. Perhaps it was not sudden. Perhaps part of the earlier development happened on land that disappeared. When survivors arrived in a new region carrying knowledge, archaeology sees the result but not the origin. A settlement appears advanced. Agriculture expands. Monuments rise. Trade begins. Historians ask how progress happens so quickly. The missing answer may lie underwater. This idea must be handled carefully. It should not become a universal explanation. Not every civilization was created by flood refugees. Not every innovation came from a lost coast. Local development was powerful. People invented, adapted, and transformed knowledge in many regions independently. But drowned landscapes may have contributed more than current models recognize. They may be one missing force among many. The future of archaeology will test this possibility. Until then, the sea remains silent. But silence is not emptiness. The Indus script is silent, yet it exists. Göbekli Tepe was silent beneath soil. The Amazon was silent beneath trees. Great Zimbabwe was silenced by prejudice. Nan Madol remains silent in the Pacific. Each silence required a different way of listening. The sea requires sonar, geology, diving, technology, memory, and patience. When we learn to listen, the silence may break. Perhaps the first major discovery will not look dramatic on camera. A pattern beneath sediment, a cluster of stones, a sample containing charcoal, a date older than expected, then another trench, more artifacts, a structure, a shoreline, a settlement. Gradually, a civilization returns, not through one golden statue, through evidence accumulating until denial becomes impossible. This is how history changes, slowly, then completely. One day, the map of prehistoric humanity may include vast regions currently shown only as blue water. Doggerland will be drawn with rivers and settlements, Sundaland with migration routes and coastal centers, the Persian Gulf Basin with wetlands and communities, ancient shelves around Australia, India, Africa, Europe, and the Americas with their own archaeological landscapes. Students may learn that the continents of the Ice Age were different, that civilization developed across places now submerged, that the modern coastline is only one temporary version of Earth. When that happens, the ocean will stop appearing as blank space in human history. It will become what it truly is, a drowned continent of memory. The final lost civilization may therefore not have one name. It may not have one king. It may not have one capital. It may be the combined world of countless coastal peoples erased by rising seas, different cultures, different languages, different times, different continents, all united by one fate. Their landscapes disappeared. Their descendants moved. Their physical history sank. We have searched deserts because ruins survive there. We have searched jungles because technology can now see beneath trees. We have searched mountains because caves preserve ancient life. The next great frontier is the continental shelf, the land beneath shallow seas, the old coastlines, the drowned rivers, the submerged plains. That is where the missing world waits. And perhaps, beneath the darkness, the stones are already there, walls lying beneath coral, paths covered by sand, wooden posts sealed in mud, tools beside extinct shorelines, burials facing a sunrise that no longer touches land. The people who created them could never have imagined submarines, sonar, or robotic vehicles. They could not know that thousands of years later, strangers would search for their homes. But they may have understood one truth we are only beginning to remember. No land lasts forever. No coastline is permanent. No civilization is beyond disappearance. The sea that fed them also took them. The water that connected their communities eventually separated their descendants from their past. Their final chapter was written not in ink, but in rising tides. And yet, that chapter may not be finished. Every expedition into drowned landscapes is an attempt to continue it. Every recovered artifact restores one human decision. Every mapped river returns one piece of geography. Every discovered settlement proves that the blue emptiness on our maps was once filled with life. Perhaps the greatest revelation awaiting beneath the sea will not be a legendary golden city. Perhaps it will be something more powerful. Proof that the beginning of civilization was never one place, one people, or one moment. It was a vast human process unfolding across forests, plains, rivers, islands, and coastlines, many of which no longer exist. The ocean may hold the evidence that human history is older, wider, and more connected than we have ever imagined. That is why the drowned world is the final and greatest mystery. Not because we know nothing about it, but because we know enough to understand how much is missing. We know the land existed. We know people lived upon it. We know the water rose. We know the evidence is out there. What we do not know is what those people built, what they believed, how they organized their lives, what knowledge they carried, and how deeply they influenced the civilizations that followed. Until those questions are answered, Every wave passes over history. Every ship crosses forgotten landscapes. Every storm moves sediment across ancient homes. Every sunrise touches an ocean, covering places where human beings once stood and looked toward a horizon completely different from ours. Beneath that horizon lies the lost world. Not dead, not imaginary, only waiting. Waiting beneath the oceans for humanity to finally remember that before the sea became sea, it was land. And upon that land, history had already begun. The deeper we travel into the forgotten past, the more one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Human history is not complete. It is a broken map, a damaged manuscript, a story written across stone, soil, forest and sea, with entire chapters still missing. Göbekli Tepe revealed that monumental builders existed before historians believed civilization had even begun. The underground cities of Cappadocia showed that ancient people could create entire hidden worlds beneath the earth. The Indus Valley left behind cities of astonishing order, yet carried its language into silence. Nan Madol rose from the ocean through engineering that still challenges the imagination. The Amazon concealed vast human landscapes beneath living forest. Great Zimbabwe proved that a civilization can remain visible and still be erased by prejudice. And beneath the oceans, drowned coastlines may still hold the earliest settlements of peoples whose names disappeared before history learned how to write them down. These discoveries do not tell us that everything we know is false. They tell us that everything we know is unfinished. Civilizations do not always vanish in one final night. Sometimes they fade slowly as rivers change direction, trade routes collapse, climates shift, rulers lose power, or people move toward safer lands. Sometimes forests cover the roads, sometimes oceans swallow the coastlines, sometimes languages die, and sometimes the truth survives in plain sight. But later generations refuse to believe it. The greatest mystery is not simply how these civilizations disappeared. The greatest mystery is how many more remain undiscovered. How many cities lie beneath deserts that have never been excavated? How many temples sleep beneath hills mistaken for natural formations? How many ancient roads disappear beneath jungle routes? How many royal centers rest beneath modern towns? How many coastal worlds remain buried under the sea? And how many civilizations have vanished so completely that not even a legend remembers their names? Perhaps one day a farmer will uncover a carved stone beneath an ordinary field. A construction worker will break through a wall and discover a city below. A satellite will reveal a geometric pattern beneath a forest. A fishing vessel will pull an artifact from an ancient drowned river. And in that moment, another forgotten world will return. One discovery can change a timeline. One inscription can restore a lost voice. One buried settlement can force history to be rewritten. This is why the past must never be treated as closed. Every ruin is a warning that greatness can disappear. Every lost language reminds us that memory is fragile. Every abandoned city proves that no civilization, no matter how powerful, is permanent. The people who built these places believed their homes would endure. They walked through streets that felt eternal. They raised walls for future generations. They performed ceremonies beneath the same stars we see today. They loved, feared, traded, worshipped, struggled and dreamed. Then time moved forward. Their names faded, their cities fell silent, their worlds became mysteries, but they were not myths. They were human, and perhaps that is the most powerful truth hidden inside every lost civilization. We are not the first people to believe we understand the world. We are not the first to build great cities. We are not the first to imagine our civilization will last forever. The earth beneath us is filled with the remains of people who once believed the same thing. So when we look at the ruins of forgotten civilizations, we are not only looking backward, we are looking into a mirror. Their rise reveals what humanity can achieve. Their fall reveals what humanity can lose. And their rediscovery reminds us that truth may remain buried for centuries, but it never stops waiting. History is still beneath our feet. It is still inside the mountains, still hidden in the forests, still sealed inside unreadable symbols, still standing in denied ruins, still resting beneath the oceans. And somewhere in the darkness, another lost civilization may already be waiting for the moment when the world is finally ready to believe it existed.